Good afternoon, darling. How you doing?
Hello, hello. How are you, Scott?
Doing fabulous. Doing fucking fabulous. Man. Wow. So you're getting your hair done, man. That looks nice. That looks really nice
No,
because your
no,
sister's
I'm
coming
doing it
in town.
myself.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. I had
That's
to
right.
kind of tuck it away because half the head ain't done yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had to get my makeup. Paul Marcel was like, Scott's still doing his makeup, folks. Won't be long now. And now I'm done.
Uh,
I've got my lips looking nice and red.
whatever.
How y'all doing this
Uh,
afternoon, folks out in the audience, man? We've got a good topic today. We're going to talk about the problem of evil and God and idealism and how
God,
it all relates. God.
God,
Yes.
God.
God. Hell yeah, man. So,
Now
I
you
was
sound like you're from
watching.
New Orleans because that's why we say God in New Orleans.
Oh, yeah, they do that. They do it down here, too. You see, God loves you.
God.
Yes. But one thing about God, though, when you look at his world, a lot of people wonder why and what kind of world did this God create for us? I mean, we've got all these hurricanes down here and tornadoes and earthquakes going on and volcanoes in Russia. And man, a lot of that stuff, causes a lot of unnecessary suffering, they say. And so a lot of folks wonder,
Yep.
well, if there's a God, why would he allow all of this stuff? And religions seek an answer to all this stuff, like the fall, and well, man chose the wrong decisions, and so God had to trigger nature against him to punish him and his generations forever until he comes back and rectifies that situation. Well, yeah, I guess you're familiar with all that creation story and explanation, right?
Right. So why would God create this imperfect world where stuff like this is even possible? Why didn't God just create paradise? And then, yeah, they're going to say, well, that's because of the Garden of Eden and Satan, in the form of the snake and the evil woman who didn't listen. And we're
Yep,
still there today. It's all women's fault.
that's right. They're gonna put you in the poorhouse. And they say it's free will, like well, God created everybody perfectly, but he left free will up to them to decide whether they want to do right or do wrong. And when man decided to do wrong by listening to that woman who listened to that snake, then that's when everything went wrong. And God, I think somebody told him what the snake told Eve, the day that you eat this fruit is the day you die. That's what God said, because he doesn't want you to know good and bad for yourself. Because having knowledge is bad. Because then you'll be like God. So, that's the story. That's how
Yeah.
it goes. So that free will. And hi, Von Eric. Nice for you to join us. I noticed you pinged in last time we were having that debate. I wanted to get you on, but I guess you had to run out. But anyways, yeah, feel free to call in, guys. We're gonna have an open forum on it. So if you are a theist or a Christian or a Muslim or what have you, feel free to jump in and let's discuss. 'Cause that's what we do over some
Let's
Jesus juice.
discuss.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it's interesting, but they started with the whole war in heaven, right? Between the God and the angels, right? And then
Hmm.
Satan, the most beautiful angel of all, said, fuck this shit. And then he led a rebellion that caused 1/3 of the angels to fall or some shit like that, right?
Right. So there must be free will in heaven
Did
too.
I get that right? It's been a long time for me. Huh?
Yeah, yeah. So there, I guess under that theodicy, there's free will in heaven, and so Satan decided to choose his free will to rebel against God, and a third of the angels followed him, and then eventually they were thrown down to earth and wreak havoc on the earth. I know as a Jehovah Witness, that was my background, being a Jehovah's Witness. So that was the story of the fall. So Satan, in the form of a snake, which, by the way, I think Orthodox Jewish people don't view the snake as Satan necessarily. But of course, in Christianity, the Satan is then interpreted as Satan. And so Satan, started misleading people. And then the people used their free will to rebel against God. And the price of their rebellion was death. But they didn't really literally die in that particular day, 24-hour day. And so it was kind of spiritual death, if you will. Physically they died. They had a lifespan. I guess Adam lived how long? Hundreds of years. And his generations grew old and died. And then the woman's problem was death as well, but she had birth pangs. The man had to sow food from the ground by the sweat of his brow, and so this is supposed to explain the hardships of life on this earth. And of course, now we have the free will we can use to avoid death by accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior who died for us. And so that blood magic is going to buy us back. It's going to buy us out of that situation because God, paid the ultimate price. God died, and the wages of sin is death. So Jesus paid the price. That so the story goes. But my question is, Jesus, he didn't really die though, did he? He had a bad weekend, they say. Like what 2 3 days of being in the grave, and then he went to hell and preached to the angels in hell, and then he came back and he's eternally God again. So I don't know if he really died or not. That's up to interpretation. People will say, well, he suffered. And then the question is, so you're telling me that, you know, losing, carbohydrates and fats and, muscle tissue and all of that is the price for sin? Where does the consciousness never ended?
So entropy. Thank you.
Yeah, entropy. So I don't know. It's to me it sounds like a lot of mental gymnastics. That's just my take
Yeah,
on it. It's a lot of pretzel logic going on.
pretzel logic.
Yeah, you got to turn yourself into a pretzel, and then you can get it.
Well, I
you know.
mean, that's if you take those things literally anyway. I'm pretty sure that all those descriptions are just like allegorical in nature. And I don't think that the early church was actually like that. I don't think they actually took these things literally. Um,
Hmm.
if you interpret these things in a, the allegory behind it, I mean, even the scripture says that God works in mysterious ways, which is a hint. You should be looking at what's behind it all. You should look deeper. You should find the symbolic meaning behind it. And I think we really screw up. Ouch, that was my earring. Hold up. Uh, we really screw up when we look at that stuff, literally just like a fable. When
Mm-hmm.
you just take Red Riding Hood, it's not about an actual wolf, you know, her grandma turning into a wolf and stuff. There's a moral behind the story, right? And we don't believe that donkeys talk and humans turn into wolves and stuff. And we understand that there's a mystical message behind it, right?
Yep. Yep. That's very interpretive. Like, you've got these literalists, and some debate whether Jesus himself was a literalist. If you listen to his, the I guess the red parts of the Bible are the words of Jesus. I think that's what he wrote, right? The red parts. But
Yeah,
anyways,
but like the New Testament is so different though from the Old Testament. It's way more, I guess, spiritual in nature, where it's more yeah, spiritual. It's not really like that. It's not written in the same damn way.
yeah, I kind of understand that in a way, but Jesus is quoted
I think
like in
I'm
the
lagging,
days of.
Scott. I think I'm lagging like crazy. I might have to go out and back in.
Okay, come on out and come on back in.
Like I can barely hear you. And yeah, sorry.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. Do that. And let me know out in the audience if I'm low as well, because I know last a few times my mic was kind of low. I don't know if I'm loud enough or not. Let me know if that's the case. But what I was gonna say is, Matthew 24:37 through 39, Jesus says, "But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating, drinking, marrying, giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be." So the point here is that it seems like Jesus took the Old Testament literally. And then you have to really figure out, well, when was the stories in in the New Testament rather literal, and when was it figurative? Was the resurrection figurative as well? Is the coming literal like it was in the days of Noah? I mean, because he kind of compared the two. So for me, it's a challenge to really determine when we're supposed to take the Bible literal and when we're supposed to take it figuratively, and things of that nature. Um, on the other hand, a lot of scholars say that ancient peoples, when they told stories, they did tell them in fictional um, allegory. That's how they communicated ideas. It was very rarely in the same ways that we do today. So it's an open question, and which is fine, but it's just interpretive. It depends on what your framing is for interpretation. And so if you've got any ideas, either in the live chat, put them down, or even call in, let us know what you think. But for me, there's so much in the Bible that I think you have to look at the context to really figure out, when was the Bible to be taken literal and when was it to be taken figurative. But overall, when we talk about the problem of evil, you have to understand everything was ultimately caused by God. God is the first cause, right? So whether directly or indirectly, God had a knowledge of what this world was going to be. He's all knowing. He knows all things. He knows the future. He knows what we're ever going to do. And so you have to wonder, if God knows everything that's ever going to happen, did he not foresee the free will, how it would be used, like how people would use their free will? And if he knew that their free will was going to lead them into bad behavior, a ruined world, a lot of suffering, even people going to hell forever, it seems like the more ethical thing would be just not to create anything at all. That would be my thought. What do you think, Sophia?
Right. I agree. I completely agree. That would be pointless and ridiculous, because it's an all-knowing God, and God would know that already beforehand. So why do it anyway? For his own pleasure or some shit? Like that would be like a sick joke. Um,
Yeah,
so I think we're just looking at it all backwards, and we're looking at it from a completely distorted lens when we talk about the problem of evil. You
mm-hmm,
know, it's not that this is just my, take on it based on my own elephant model and idealism. Consciousness is its own light. And what I mean by that is it's a self reflective frequency. It has the ability to self reflect. But just like you and I, we all have a shadow side, a side that we're not that aware of. We call it the subconscious, right? And this whole lifetime, what you're doing is you're unraveling yourself. You're trying to integrate your shadow self with your higher self and become one whole being that is fully aware, right? So I think that that's the exact same thing with consciousness. It's evolving and discovering and remembering its own true nature, as it unfolds. So when we see, suffering, it's just a result of unawareness, right? That's how
yeah,
I look at it. Because that
I
just makes
agree.
more sense. There's no one to blame. It doesn't make sense to run around and blame it, because we're talking about, like, do we blame an infant for, when they first do their first steps and they knock things over and make a mess? You know, that's, their level of understanding at that time, and we don't get mad. At least normal people don't. I mean, there are some people,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like blaming an infant for being blind to, you know, stuff like being cautious, or do we expect a baby to clean up their own mess and stuff like? No, we don't. So why do that? Why play that blame game? Now I would say we can say that at some point though there comes self accountability, right? That's a
Mm-hmm.
requirement. That's the whole thing about self reflection.
Mm-hmm.
So once you lose the ability to self reflect, to self correct, right? That's when we may be crossing into what we call evil, right?
Yep. Yep.
Because now you're intentionally doing what you're doing. You what's right and what's wrong, or yeah,
Mm-hmm.
let's say right or wrong. Because I know people have a problem with that, and they're going to say, well, what is right or what's wrong? It's
Mm-hmm.
it's a whole nother subject, but let's just say right or wrong. I mean, when you have certain faculties and when you've evolved to a certain level, you're expected to be self accountable, right?
Right.
And I think once you lose that ability, that's when we're crossing over into evil, because you have to make that choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
Absolutely.
you choose to not evolve. You choose not to confront your demons or your trauma or whatever. Because some people, they choose to go into denial and not confront those things. It's like opening the floodgates to trauma, and they don't want to experience that. They don't want the suffering. And that's just where that whole thing about suffering comes in at. That's just part of it. You know what I'm saying? That's
Correct.
part of it, cupcakes. You got to go through it.
Gotta
Sometimes the
do it.
only way out is through. So when you deny it and pretend like it's not there, that's when it festers and becomes a fucking problem, a big problem. And you're doing that consciously. Some people may say, "Oh, it's not consciously," but you are. You're making that choice. So
Uh-oh. Sophia dropped out. But I would agree, like, it makes more sense that in a universe that's not being supervised, then that problem sort of dissolves away. Like if you take a universe like ours and you um, assume that there's this intelligent God who's supervising things and making sure everything works the way it's supposed to work, then the responsibility is on God. At least part of it is. If you want to say humans have free will, then they play their part, but God would also play a part because he's the great causer of the universe and he's supervising the universe. Whereas on idealism, there is no great supervisor who's overlooking how things play out at every moment. Rather, I think what Sophia is saying is that consciousness is sort of ever evolving and changing, and we're just sort of like expressions of that. You know, humanity itself is evolving and changing, and you see, like some would call it moral progress. You see, you know, progress in morality. Like there's no
Right.
longer slavery. There's no longer, you know, now there's women rights. There's gay rights. There's trans people's rights. There's, you know, society is getting more empathetic for each other, you know, because we have the technology to do so and we have the ability to see. We have a history that we can kind of build on. And so we are evolving as conscious parts of this nature. And so consciousness is sort of ever evolving from the inside out. Whereas under theism, at least classical theism, there's this God who starts out perfect. He's perfect, and he's the one who governs the universe. He oversees everything, and nothing happens outside of God's will. And if that's true, then babies who are being killed and things of that nature would be, you know, a product of God's will, right? If that's logically the case. And Paul Marcel says they had gay rights in ancient Greece. Let's not forget, it's it isn't new. That's right. That's right. I would agree. Um, you know. So, but still, what my point is that humanity evolves. You know, we know this. You know, even animals evolve. All animals evolve. We're animals. You know, animals is just the label we put on biological life forms. So, you know, um, at any rate, you know, consciousness it seems to be a little bit intrinsic. Like I believe in teleology. You know, there's like a teleology to nature. And I know that this isn't very popular, at least in classical biology, that there's this teleological, goal driven, purpose driven nature intrinsic to nature, that it's all kind of blind chance. But I don't see it that way. I think that you either cohere with reality or you don't. And when you're not coherent and you're inconsistent with the way reality works, that can be called evil. Like, you know, all life wants to reflexively live. Like we all want to strive to survive. You know, everybody wants to pass their information on in the form of genes and hand down information to their children. We want to do right by our community and our greater communities and survive and thrive. And that seems to be intrinsic in human nature and in nature in general. But when you act against it, like you become this serial killer, you become this narcissistic individual, you're actually being irrational. You're not being coherent
Yep.
with the teleology of nature. And in my opinion, this is what evil is. Evil is when you're just not cohering with nature. I think I got that from David Bohm, who is a
Yeah, but
physicist.
I do want to add. Sorry, also by the way, technology is never on my side for some reason. But I think it's just the area that I'm in, and I've tried everything, guys, like everything, and it just keeps causing issues. But anyway, I just want to add to that. I want to add that we have to focus on the fact that it is still a choice, right? It's
Hmm.
just up to you how courageously you're going to be and how deep you're actually going to dig. You know, you have to be able to see that monster, right? inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta, in other words, you got people walking around saying, "Well, that could never be me. Like, I'm just not me." It's fucking self-righteous people who think they could never be in a position where they could ever do something like that person. It's always the other, the other, and
Mm-hmm.
you could never, and all that kind of shit. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
nah, like hiding your shadow is some weak ass shit, right? Because it's there. It ain't going nowhere. You might as well accept you have the capability to be a good person and you have the capability of being a bad person. You could you could have very well been someone that ended up being a serial killer. We all have those same potentials. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
when you walking around trying to fool yourself and put on all these different masks because you're trying so hard to hide your shadow, that's when it really takes over. That's when it really comes out and you have no control over it at that point. So that is a choice that
Yes, it
people
is.
make to just disregard that shit, and it's like, that's not, you have to be responsible for that yourself. And I think we have to stop playing these blame games. When we talk about sin, I don't see it as sin, right? What religion often condemns as sin or wickedness, I see that as it's like a trial and error consciousness navigating its own depths, and you as an individual, you're just an expression of that as well. And it's up to you to do that, to really explore yourself and go inward. That's up to you. No one else can do that for you. I don't care if somebody places you in a paradise with everything you ever wanted. If you're not right inside of yourself, none of that shit is going to make a difference.
Yeah. It takes work too because I know for me there's been parts in my life where I knew something was bad for me or bad for others, and for some reason I couldn't help myself. I couldn't stop doing the bad thing until I really faced why that it went deeper. It's like we can talk about the symptom that I keep behaving this way and try to deal with it on the symptom level, but then you have to eventually come to the point, well, why do you want to do that anyways? What's beyond that? And then you start uncovering that truth, and you start seeing things that maybe you're unaware of that's kind of influencing your thoughts. Like sometimes I would have, like when I was younger, I had a really bad anger problem, and I would lash out in anger, and then after I lashed out in anger and pretty much embarrassed myself and caused harm to someone else, I'm wondering to myself, why do I act like a complete idiot? And at the time that I'm doing it, I don't care. At the time that I'm doing it, I'm just flying on automatic. Like somebody just pushed my button. Zing! They pushed my little anger button and I went off. And then later on, I'm
Yeah.
wondering, why did I do that? And and for a while, I taught myself, well, they did this to me. They did that to me. So they got what they deserved. And after a while, you start realizing, well, that blame game thing ain't working no more. After a while, it becomes, you know what? Yeah, you can say it's their fault, but when it keeps happening over and over, it kind of starts becoming your fault too, though. And then
Yeah, the problem
then you
is
have to look
these things.
underneath.
The problem is when you let these things go unchecked, they become uncontrolled. And so, who is to blame when you one day say, "Oh well, I'm going to shoot up a school now"? Was that
Yeah.
everyone else? No. You waited too long to address an issue, and that's your choice. You know
Yep.
what I'm saying? And that's just the thing. It's a lot about it comes down to pattern recognition. You know, I did a lot of things subconsciously that I wasn't aware of. And it took me to say, all right, something's up here. I'm recognizing a pattern. Why am I doing this? And sometimes you have to go all the way back down into your ancestry to figure out where that trauma first occurred. It may not even happen to you. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Could have happened to your mom and it could have happened to her grandma. And then people are conditioned and pass that behavior down. And then you're stuck with the same fucking pattern over and over again. So sometimes that's what it takes. In my case, I had to come all the way from Germany to come to America to get on the plantation where the fuck my family tree came from, figure out what the fuck happened to my family tree, where I actually came from, what my roots are. And I had to literally physically investigate all that stuff just to find out who the fuck I really am, what I got going on inside of me that's like ticking time bombs that I have no idea why it's even there. And that helped me figure out who I really am at the core of things. What triggers me? What are my triggers? Why is this pattern here? You know what I'm saying? It takes a massive amount of awareness. It does. That's what meditation is. It's self awareness as much as you possibly can be, you know?
And yeah, and I agree. And that's almost like comparative to the easy problem of evil or the easy problem of behavior, undesirable behavior. And then we have like the hard problem of evil, like the hard problem of bad behaviors. Like there's this guy named Charles Whitman, um, and who Charles Whitman was, he was called the Texas Sniper, right? I don't know if you ever heard about that. But this guy, back in the 60s, he just went on a shooting spree and went and killed all kinds of people. You know, he was in Texas and he went on a tower, like a college high tower, and just started sniping against people, um, you
Hmm.
know, and started killing people. So, like, I think this was at the UT Austin campus, and he got through security, went up to the 28th floor of some building, the clock tower, and he killed three people just within the tower, and then opened fire from the observation deck, with a hunting rifle and other weapons. And he ended up killing like 15 people, wounding 31, and like within 96 minutes, something like that. And then he was shot and killed himself. Um, And the thing about it is, when the investigating officers found Whitman, he had some kind of note. Um, it says, I talked with a doctor once for about 2 hours and, tried to convey, his impulses, and no one really listened to him. I've been fighting my mental turmoil alone and seemingly to no avail. Um, And so he asked that, they open his brain up and look at him, through an autopsy to see why is he this way. And they found like this pecan-sized brain tumor above his red nucleus, which is in the white matter
Hmm.
below the gray center of your thalamus, which he identified as, I think it's astrocytoma. And this led to his extreme behavior. So he couldn't
Right,
control himself. He really couldn't control himself. And had he had the technology today to detect and remove that tumor, he might not have ended up being a serial killer. And so
right,
you know what I'm saying? And so while it's really easy to blame people for the atrocities and the evil that they commit, a lot of these evils are not done out of sheer will, but out of lack of will, a lack of having control of one's will. It isn't like he wanted to do this. And so then that goes back to like the topic of the show, like theism. If God, why all this evil? Like what was the purpose in God allowing this sort of situation to happen? Like what was the point? Someone would say, "Oh well, a greater knowledge of the world came out of it. Now we know about tumors, and now we can address that problem." And so that's why. So God was kind of doing us a favor by allowing that situation to happen. But you got to remember, this God is all powerful. So he could have just created a world without these sort of situations to begin with, right?
right. That's just my whole problem with how that's framed, you know. While I agree it's trial and error and we learn from it and we did get knowledge out of that, right? You know, uh, but at the same time, like you said, if a God is an all-knowing being and and this God can create a perfect world, why the fuck would he created in that way where those type of problems exist. So that would mean, like I said, that's a sick joke. I wouldn't do that if I had all that power. I would create stuff that's perfect if I had that, if I had that power. So in a way, it's also admitting that either God's a complete asshole, which he obviously is, or God is not perfect himself and God is learning himself. And we don't call it God. We say it's just consciousness unraveling itself, you know, reflecting on itself and learning through trial and error. And another thing I wanted to mention, you have these people that are so anti diversity. Diversity is um inevitable, right?
Mhm.
Everything that exists from an idealist standpoint is a perspective of consciousness, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, some perspectives don't serve any purpose, and we come to those conclusions, right? And then we put those things aside. But shutting out things and pretending like they're not there and like that's not part of consciousness or whatever, like blaming things on women or gay people or transgenders or immigrants and all that kind of stuff. Like everybody acts like they're an island, and that's just not the nature of reality. What we're trying to do, or what we should be doing, is see all of these perspectives and then see how can we, um, you know, find a balance between all of that.
Mhm.
Why is the first instinct always elimination
Mhm.
or superiority? I'm better than you. I'm more moral than you. You're wrong. Da 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 da. Like we're not getting anywhere doing that. So like, you know what I'm saying? We've been doing that for a long ass time, and it's not working. You know?
Yeah, it's like the old blame game, and it's just divisive. I went out last night and I missed it personally, but I got there after this situation happened. But one of the guys at the bar, I was like asking. I have a friend that comes to the bar, and his name is Sam, and I told you about Sam.
Yeah, I
And I
heard
was like,
about that.
and I'm like, where's Sam? I'm surprised he's not here. And the guys were like, oh man, you missed it, man. Like a little while ago, Sam brought his sister and some friends, and then his some girl he was with, some white lady, and they were up in the bar, and she was getting drunk, and she was talking about, yeah, well, if it wasn't for you N words, and you N words this and you N words that, and blah blah blah, and the bartender was trying to tell her to please calm down. And at this bar, there's a lot of African Americans, and they're always on the lookout for white folks that talk like that. And Sam was there, and Sam's sisters were there, and they were kind of trying to. He was saying they were trying to be patient a little bit, but because it was with their brother's girlfriend or whatever. But after a while, it got really ugly because she wouldn't shut up and she wouldn't stop, and it just turned into a huge, ugly situation. But it's like that stuff, man, right there. That's why we have so much evil in the world. Like, people don't know how to be rational. Like, people are
When to
so
take
busy
fucking
blaming.
accountability.
Yeah, no accountability, and they're just, it's like you're about to get, fucked up in a bar because you don't know how to talk, and you're sitting there spewing all this hate, and you wonder why all kinds of shootings happen and all kinds of beatdowns happen in the world. And it's like a lot of this is just a product of duality. It's this, like you were just saying, the blame game. You see the other, you're always comparing, and you're always looking at, oh, the problem's not with us, the problem's with y'all, you know, and it creates so much hate, man.
What it does, it stops the process of integration. Like I was saying, as a black person, I do experience a lot of racism, but I don't talk about it every day, all day. But how the fuck are you supposed to integrate in a system where you're not even welcomed, right?
Right.
And to think that people can't sense that or feel that when there are stupid, crazy obstacles placed in your way, when you have to always somehow, for some reason, answer about your race to some white person. Like, you get tired of that shit, right? And it
Mm-hmm.
does mess with you psychologically because, like, why can't I just walk around without people noticing my skin color? It's so ridiculous, you know? And it always happens. It always fucking happens. You're walking around and somebody may say to you, "Oh my God, I love your skin complexion. Why are you
Mm-hmm.
noticing it?" That's what I
Mm-hmm.
want to know. You know, I don't go up to somebody and say, "Oh my God, you are so white I can see through you. How'd you do that?" You know, wow, I am so amazed. You look
Yeah.
transparent, bitch. You know, it's like, come on, chill with that shit. Chill with that shit. And then what we got going on now is white people are the new victims, because black people are starting to integrate more and hold similar positions. And now it's all like, oh, it's just being given to you because you're black and it's being stolen from us. And, we have the right to keep gatekeeping. And how dare you? I'm so sick of seeing that dumbass fucking shit. And you know what's going to happen is, though, unfortunately, when you're like that, who are you really hurting? Because the world's going to change, the world's going to evolve with or without you. What you don't understand about that? You're
Exactly.
just getting rid of your fucking self being like that. Cuz you can't change it. You can't change it. It's just like trying to exterminate roaches. It ain't happening. Roaches always come back. I mean, it's been proven scientifically that they would survive a cataclysm, all right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Melanin, brown skin, you're not going to eradicate that. And I'm not talking to all white people. You know what I'm saying? You know that.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
talking to the ones that are like that. What are you
Right.
doing? Stop it. It's you're mentally ill. Stop it. Heal yourself. Heal yourself.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just thinking about that lady, and now she wakes up the next day. Oh, I was just drunk. I didn't know what I was talking. I was just being crazy. But the thing is, you're hurting yourself. You're gonna get your ass hurt one day doing that because
Yep.
you ain't stopping shit. You're not changing nothing. And we're at that really weird time in history. And for me it's not fast enough. It's like we're in 2025. We should be way past this kind of stuff. This for me, that's the way my
Yeah.
perspective.
But then you also have, like, you have the race baiters on all sides, even in the black community. I'm not gonna take up for that shit either. Like, in my case, you're trying to be white. Like, why do you speak the way that you do? And
Mhm.
you think you're better than me because you have this kind of hair and shit. Like, you have the reverse of that dumb shit too. And
Mhm.
I don't condone that either. Like, we just need to start seeing past that. We're all different and unique, and everyone has their own little features and shit. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Well,
let's just
when I
share in our culture,
well
learn
when I
from
told
one
my friend
another.
well when I told my friend Sam about you and DMT, he's like, "Yeah, I got to talk to that sister. She trying to be white. We don't
Ah,
do
I
that.
got
She
some
know better
shrooms
than that.
too.
We don't do that."
That's fine. Tell them I got some shrooms too.
Yeah, he got shrooms and everything.
Yeah. Tell them I'm the plug. Now let me stop.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's like the at least we can address these easy problems of evil and unnecessary suffering by
But see,
trying to trying to
what?
address these things. Like for example, like last week I was on Skeptic Haven, which is a great channel by the way. My friend Bryce is
And I still ain't
hosting
watching. I'm
that.
sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll get around to it, but I decided to call in. It's an atheist show, skeptic show, and they were fielding questions and conversations about certain beliefs or philosophies against the mainstream like materialism, like they were entertaining ghost stories and supernatural or philosophies that are out there or whatever. So I thought, yeah, let me call in and talk about, my experience with ghost stories, but also maybe I can talk about idealism a little bit and see what their takes on that would be. And of course, they're
Mm-hmm.
atheists, they're materialists, and they don't really understand all that stuff. So, and I think one guy, Ethan, he's like a big physics guy or scientist type of minded person. And so I called in and we were talking about, I started eventually talking about idealism and life after death and, stuff like that. And, they were like asking a lot of questions, a lot of good, and to their credit, they were very open minded. Once they heard the answer, they didn't just automatically, like most of your, atheist friends of mine will just kick back, oh, you're just woo woo or whatever. They actually thought about it and were trying to logically connect the dots with what I was saying. They were really trying to see where my dots weren't connecting. And they eventually
Mm-hmm.
found out and they admitted, well, okay, it makes sense. I can't really say you're wrong. Do you have any questions, Ethan? Ethan, the physics guy's like, no, actually, he's pretty consistent. I can't see
He's
anything
making
wrong with it.
sense.
He's making sense. But then they said the only problem we have is okay, but who cares? Okay, you're an idealist. Idealist makes sense. What good are you doing? Who cares about stuff like what's the point? What is your end game with that? Like I can hear they were
Well,
saying I can hear your passion in it. You seem very well versed in it, but who really gives a fuck, Scott? And then so I said, well,
well,
the thing is, it's not mental masturbation because they're saying it sounds like just a lot of mental masturbation.
yeah, like Al was saying. But see, here's the thing that I try to get people to understand. It matters because we are as human beings, we see the world, right? We're living in it. And we see all the suffering and whatever else, right? And some of us went through a lot of suffering, like fucking hell. Some of us seen hell. Some of us have seen hell and walked with Satan. Take it from me. Like, and
Yeah,
so the thing is, that drives you to want to find a solution, right? And then you have an option of saying, you know what? I'm just going to make a good life for myself, put myself in this little bubble, and I'll be fine. And I don't have to be asked with it and care about what's going on around me. But it always kind of circles back around to you in some kind of way. So, what I'm saying is, having this perspective and seeing it from an idealist viewpoint, it puts the power into our hands. It gives us back that creative spark where we become co-creators and we all participate in shaping our reality. And then that
right.
way, that's just my belief. That way we can really make a difference. We can really change things for the better. So the whole point is to make the world a better place. Now some people may not care about that. Some people may say, well, when I die, who gives a fuck? I'm dead. I won't know anything. But we're talking about the next generation, you know, for the next generation. Why should they go through the suffering that we could have taught them about or helped them prevent, in the future? Like, you don't just live for yourself. You know what I'm saying? I mean, some do, but that's just not my perspective.
Yeah.
I
And
think that whatever you do, go ahead.
on a I was going to say like the answer that I gave to that question, like they're like, "Well, who cares?" and this and that. People like Alex O'Connor, Annika Harris, Christoph Koch, um, a lot of people that they were familiar with, people that are atheists that is within their, community, well, one of the more popular speakers, Sam Harris, just I named a whole bunch and they're like, yeah, we know these people. And I'm like, well, they also lean towards idealism or at least panpsychism, like which is a kind of a form of idealism. And they sort of see the value in it and talk about it. And then they were saying, yeah, well, you got to understand, Scott, those are philosophers. And the thing about philosophers is they make their living doing that. So for them, they get paid to talk about it. But for the average person, this stuff doesn't really mean anything. And I'm like saying to them, well, this whole thing kicked off because of AI. Because back when they started doing AI research, I said, the whole premise of AI is that computers could one day be conscious, right? That's the thought. If materialism is true, I'm like telling them, if you guys are always saying that all consciousness is, it's just an emergent property of neurons firing in the brain. It's information processing. So if you just get enough complex information to process just right, like in a neural system in your brain, then consciousness will emerge. That's what you believe, right? I said, well, guess what? AI researchers think the same thing. So they're putting together what you call neural networks. That's what these large language models are. They're neural networks. And they think that, if you just simulate something like a brain in these neural network systems, then these things will become conscious and intelligent and can solve a lot of problems and do a lot of things. And they were like, yeah, but these computers aren't conscious, Scott. Consciousness is this weird thing. It doesn't mean that they're conscious. And I'm like, okay, then you're proving my point. You're
Right.
actually making my point that actually it doesn't create. If you're saying that you just don't believe it, well, I just don't believe it either. So then the answer to the question is not neural networks create consciousness, but maybe consciousness is more fundamental. And that's why we talk about these things. That's why and I said the good thing about it is it talks about non-duality. We're all conscious creatures. We have something in common that can bind us together, mainly being sentient conscious creatures on the earth. And we should value that, and we should value experience. This is what a lot of veganism is based on. They don't want to create suffering for, animals. No, you don't want, suffering even for fucking plants and shit, if they're conscious. There's a lot of ethical implications, and some people take that shit very serious. Like Alex O'Connor, he's a vegan, and he says the reason he doesn't eat meat is because he doesn't want to contribute to the suffering of animals like cows and pigs and other sentient beings that are just put in these big coops and tortured to death, and then we eat them. So he doesn't want to pay his money towards that sort of activity in his mind because he takes
But
consciousness as fundamental. So he doesn't really want to do that. So for him, at
but
least, it's a
because of
moral
that,
thing.
because of that, yeah, because of that, I mean, it just sounds to me like a lot of people have a lack of empathy because of this loss of connection,
Right.
not realizing that we're all connected. So we naturally show empathy towards one another, but because of this upside down belief that it's all separate and that we're all islands, I think that's where that comes from. People no longer see the point. Why should I care about the next man? Why should I
Mm-hmm.
care about the next country? Why should I give a shit about that animal being slaughtered? Like, who gives a fuck? And that's just kind of where we're at, man. We're at this time where it's all about self gratification. And if you show an ounce of empathy, you're the weirdo. I don't understand. Like, that, it hurts me to see injustices and shit like that, because I can relate to it. So what's the problem here? You can't relate to someone else's pain. Why exactly? You know
Mm-hmm.
what the fuck went wrong there?
Well, see, this is kind of a contradiction to me too, because I always say that even materialists are actually idealists. They just don't want to admit it. They're epistemic idealists, and the reason why is because all they do is talk about their feelings. They also talk about their feelings. They talk about protecting people's identities. They talk about protecting people's experience. They talk about well-being. Well, well-being has to do with conscious creatures. You don't worry about the well-being of a rock because you don't think a rock is conscious. So there's no such thing as a well-being. But for humans and animals, they feel sorry for them and they want to protect their feelings and their well-being and stuff. Well, why should that be the case if they're really materialists? If they're really materialists, then it seems that experience and well-being is sort of inconsistent because we're all
Well,
just
maybe they
rocks.
only care about their own kind, though. Maybe they only care about their own experience. Maybe
Right. Well,
they're only all about
well that's
themselves.
the that was the criticism I think at the beginning of what they call it, secular humanism. And so a lot of critics of secular humanism is that, yeah, well, where do you draw the line? Like you're all about well-being, but they try to find the critique is, yeah, but you're only caring about your well-being. What about the well-being of other things that you don't care about? Like where do you draw the line and why? And so that's always been the question that the secular humanist people can't really answer too well. Like I think they've moved the goalposts to include animals. So now, if you look at the literature, secular humanism will say, "Well, yeah, we include any like you wouldn't abuse your animal, you wouldn't abuse your dog. Actually, laws against that now. So we draw the line there, but we don't really care if you abuse other things like plants and flowers and shit like that because we don't really see them as conscious. We don't really know if that's true. But then you have folks like Alex O'Connor and Tom Jump who say, well, how do you know they're not conscious? They actually behave consciously. In other words, they react to their environment just like we do. So you can't really say that a fetus isn't conscious. You can't really say that a plant or a vegetable isn't really conscious. So, really, to eat plants and kill fetuses is really immoral because if you don't know, you should err on the side of caution and just assume that they may be conscious. And so now they're even expanding it now to Chat GPT, and people are even getting married to Chat GPT and other these AI models and stuff because that's how serious people are taking it. They're like, well, if we're going to say that about humans and we're going to say that about animals and other things, well, we might as well include our computers now because our computers are now reacting to what we say and stuff like that. Now we have to feel sorry for them too. So now the line is getting further and further and further. Like, where does it going to draw the line before they just become all out, idealist or something, because everything's conscious. Now, on idealism, you're not necessarily saying that everything's conscious. I think that's the panpsychist version, right? But I think
I think
idealists say that, yeah, what do you think?
I think it just comes down to living consciously, right? Like, let's take eating meat for example. I don't think that eating meat in and of itself is inherently evil or bad, right? I mean, we have to eat to survive, right? But I think it's a problem. I think it's a problem when you
My word.
right. I think it's a problem when you like there's a difference between, let's say, being a hunter gatherer and hunting an animal for food, but consciously knowing you're only taking what you need. Because, I mean, in the jungle, you'd be hunted too, right? And
Hmm.
it's just
Hmm.
part of how it is. It's just the natural order. So everybody's food for somebody, right? And I think it's just important that we only take what we need if it's necessary, right? But other than that, what the problem is, we're slaughtering way too many animals. We're causing animals to go extinct, and we're doing that with all resources on this planet. And that's just where it becomes a problem when you're just constantly taking and taking, and it just comes down to greed and profit and big corporations, big tech. You know, at the end of the day, we're fucking up our own home, our own environment, and taking so much till it has nothing else to give. When you abuse an animal or abuse any human being, there comes a point where that person just has nothing else to give, and then what? you know and it's like people are conditioned to just replace things. Marriage is just an institution, and if one marriage don't work, you just replace that person with another person. And if that person don't work out, you just replace that person with another person. Like, it's like we just act like everything is disposable and replaceable. But what happens when we run out? You know, what happens
Yeah.
when we completely run out of shit? And I think that's the problem. We don't think about that. We just do whatever the fuck we feel like doing, and we don't even consider how that's going to impact us in the future, because most people think, well, I'm going to die anyway, long as it ain't happening in my lifetime. And so with that kind of mindset, like, what's the point of anything then? you know I don't understand. What is that, nihilism?
Nihilism, yeah. And I mean, you've got people like Neil deGrasse Tyson who would say, well, nature is always out to kill you. It's out to kill you in some way. We've seen COVID-19, how nature unleashed this huge virus onto humanity and killed like what 7 million people worldwide, and we had to
Yeah, well,
actually
what?
come
How
up
do we
with
know? Do
vaccines.
we know for a fact that's nature though? Like, do we know that for a fact? I mean, from what I know in research, there was gain of function studies. Like, why do we engage in that type of shit?
Right.
Like,
Well, let's say that may be a disputed fact, but say like just natural disasters. Let's take something very simple we can all agree on. Like, we know nature, plate tectonics is just a natural function of nature. It's not out to do anything, it's just doing what it does. And people are just in the way, and people get swallowed up, or people get killed in a fire that was caused by
well,
lightning.
maybe don't build a city right under the mouth of a volcano. You should be all
Yeah,
right.
that might be
Maybe
an
stop
idea.
being maybe stop being an invasive species.
Right.
Like,
That's what I'm getting at
I
is
see
that
that here. I see that
there
here in the country. They're burning down fields and fields of land just so they can build more buildings on it. You're literally encroaching on every fucking thing. So,
mm,
do you not think that there's such a thing as the laws of immutable laws, right?
mhm.
Immutable laws of cause and effect. Do we contribute to any of this, or is it just happening because God designed it all fucked up, and it's someone else's fault, but it's never our fault, right? It's never anything that we do.
And perspective is everything. Like at the very if you look at the huge picture, the big picture, everything that happens is just part of reality. There is no real cause and effect at that level of reality. There's just potentiality expressing itself. Like, it's bound to happen. It's like everything that's possibly ever going to happen exists somewhere. Like, that whole block universe theory, where everything is just everything. It's all there. And we just experience it as a cause and effect sort of law at our human level, at our level, which it makes sense, and it gives meaning and it gives purpose. Like, we don't want to go and destroy the rainforest, because guess what? That's going to cause a lot of other problems. Or we don't want to just, release carbon emissions in the air, because that's going to cause global warming or something like that. And you see the weather changing, and that's causing suffering and evil and things like that, because big industry, big corporations don't give a fuck. They just want to make their money now. So you see cause and effect play out in a very meaningful way at the everyday level. But I guess if you're going to take this God's eye view of everything, especially under idealism, you would just say that nature just is what it is, and we're just part of it. We're just going through that process, that hard learning process. And there's really,
Yeah,
at the end of the day, no real good and bad morality in it from that perspective. From that perspective, things just are. And it's a very
yeah,
human
but that's
subjective thing.
yeah. I mean, nature just is what it is. But at the same time, you know, once you understand how it is, then there's also a point where you say certain things you shouldn't do because it's going to cause this or that because of how nature is. You know, like you know what I'm saying? I mean, to disregard it is just crazy. And I mean, David Rockefeller himself said we shall overcome all obstacles, including nature and seeing nature as an obstacle. But you dumb dummy, aren't you nature too? I mean, when
Right.
you die, you literally turn back into the dust and dirt that you came from, the ground. You look no different from the ground once you're completely decayed. So like you are literally nature. So what do you mean overcome nature? What do you mean overcome entropy? What, you want to live forever through technology? I mean, what are we talking about here? We're going to eliminate nature? I'm not sure what they mean with that shit. That seems very self-destructive,
And it
and it
seems
comes
very
from that mind.
arbitrary. It's kind of arbitrary too because see, like,
What does that word actually
it's
mean?
like
I'm sorry, but
it's just sort of random. Like you're just cherry picking what sounds good at the time. Like just arbitrary. It's this meaningless. It's like you think about it this way. We are within the system. How are we going to know the objective ontological truth about nature when we're inside of nature just going through the process? It's like it's hard to really say what's really going on from a God's eye view when you're just a person with a cog in the wheel. You're just part of the system itself. So you're just going through the
right.
motions. It's kind of like I like Michael Levin, that biologist, who says that we're made up of like trillions and trillions of cells and bacteria and things like that, right? Well, do you think that each little cell in our body knows what its purpose is for the overall system? It doesn't. It's just doing what it has to do to survive for itself in its own little context. And whatever they're doing in their own little context is just contributing to the overall system. It's kind of like an ant colony. Each of the little ants don't know that they're a colony. They just think we're little ants and we're smelling for food. That's all they know. But when you put all these little ants together doing that, it creates this colony that seems to be moving in patterns and purpose and teleology and stuff like that. So we're like
It's
those little
almost as if
ants.
there's a goal. It's almost as if there's consciousness behind it, right? Some
Right.
type of
Greater, yeah.
intelligent purpose.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The teleology, the greater teleology that we're not really, maybe we're not fully conscious of. We're just conscious of our little part of it. Like we're limited minds. Like we're just limited minds within a greater conscious teleology or ontology that's doing its own thing. And we think we're so self-important. So we care so much about our little life situations and our little sufferings and hard times and stuff
And
like
that's,
that.
we don't see beyond that.
Right. Exactly.
We don't
Like,
see past that. It's like there's a good example. I actually learned this in a movie where some dude brought that up, and I started thinking about it. But it's like, okay, let's take an ant since you were talking about ants. You and that ant, right? Y'all share the same space. But your perspective from the ant's perspective is completely different. In other words, you're living in two different worlds, even though you're sharing the same world. Because from the ant's perspective, it can never see the whole you, right? It can never see all the stuff that you see. It can only see like maybe one little dot of on your shoe, right? And not really know what it is. It can only kind of sense that there is something else standing there or whatever. They don't know what it is. And so to think that your own little perspective is the only perspective and that's all there is, that's where the arrogance comes in at. There could be a whole lot of shit going on that you can't see, that you are not aware of, happening right in your same space, but you're not aware of it. And that's the thing that I be saying, like, it's not really that outrageous to think that that's possible, right? Because just like that ant, you could be that ant and see your worldview from that ant's perspective and not even know that all of this exists just like that ant.
mm-hmm. And
So
see,
you,
that's the
if
thing.
you keep
That
doing that,
yeah, you
go
limit
ahead.
yourself. Yeah, you limit your it's like you've got perspectives that are based on perception which is very limited because we only perceive a very small range of what's going on in reality. So if you base your perspective on your perception, then you're setting yourself up to be manipulated even by others who are able to see things at a meta perspective. So, for example,
Yes, and you can see that they're like this. It's we experience this all the time. Like a lot of times you don't see certain things until you become aware of it, and all of a sudden you see it all over the place. But before
hmm
that, you could have sworn that didn't exist. But now all of a sudden that you're aware of it for whatever reason, somehow you got pushed into awareness about something specific, and all of a sudden it's everywhere. Now you're aware of it. Now it's part of
yes,
your perspective, right?
yep, and now you see the greater system how it's actually exploiting you based on your little limited perception. Because see, the greater system knows that you're only going to be aware of your personal situation, which they've designed for you. They've put before you what you should buy, what you should sell, buy, what you should believe in, stuff like that. And they know that your perception of all that is going to mold your perspective of reality. And so now they've got you where they want you. They know that you operate on this operating system that we've designed for you. So now we're in control. We can come in and we can start tweaking it out to move you where we want to move you because you're just driven by your little perceptions that we've created for you. It's like for me, um,
Yeah, all they
you
got to
know,
do is manipulate your perception, and that's it. And
it's
that's
just
what
as
you call
simple.
a social.
Yeah, social engineering. And it's like,
Yeah,
when I look out of my window, I can say, you know what, it's a great day. Everybody's great. Everything's great. Look, the UPS truck is coming by. I see the guy in the UPS truck drop off a package, and everything's great. That's my perception of the world. What I don't see, did you know that UPS driver, he's going to keep driving, keep delivering packages. He's got his own problems. He's got his own life he's got to deal with. He goes home at the end of his day, deals with his situations, does his thing. I'm not aware of any of that stuff. I just see him as
yeah.
like
And
a
the
little
other UPS,
character.
that UPS driver that since you brought that up, could have been that UPS driver that a couple weeks ago died from a heat stroke after he left that package at your door. You'd
That's what
never
I'm
know though.
saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's so much about this life we don't really see. In our perspective of life, if we let it be limited to our perception, we can be really open to being manipulated. We're very vulnerable at that point. And that's why I'm saying that's where I see the value. Like they were saying, it's just mental masturbation. It's not really mental masturbation if you really dig deep on this. And if you take it halfway serious, you can kind of see where it's obviously going to lead you. It's going to lead you into a more aware life, a more open, and you start seeing the possibility of life is beyond even what you could imagine, and you start opening your mind to that, and you can start really, evolving in this life. But if you're stuck in this little perception that is all based around my little town, in my little neighborhood, in my little job, in my little things, I'm never going anywhere. That's just going to be my life centered right there. And it's just going to be,
Yeah,
a
because
very limited life.
consciousness wants to expand, and
Yep,
that's just how it is. So
exactly.
you can either try to, you know, expand yourself or just be stuck in your little bubble.
And
It's
going
just it
back
just that's
to,
just boring to me.
yeah, and like how it relates to some of these religious ideas about the problem of evil and God. If your perspective or your perspective is based on this little religious teaching you've been taught, this little simple story about the fall and the Garden of Eden, you know, you have the answer put before you. And so, it's almost like you can't help the evil is there for a reason, and it takes almost the responsibility out of your life. It takes the accountability out because
What you
actually,
mean almost? That's what it is. It's just, oh,
exactly.
cast your burden up on Jesus. He's gonna save you. You ain't gotta do shit.
Yeah. Look, I was watching a thing about the black community, for example, and the church. And the question was, has the church really helped the black community? Has that really
Nope,
done anything to expand the black community's
nope,
consciousness? Nope. And
nope.
now, and you've got all these other folks that are coming in talking about, oh, well, really, we need to get away from the church. And really, what it's about is these space aliens. And like the Grand Canyon was created by the aliens, and they're coming to save us and take us away. And then other people are saying, all you're really
That's just
doing at that
changing your
point,
God.
you're just trading it for some other bullshit, you know.
Right, you just change and replacing it with a new doctrine. Like, no, like that doesn't help. When you sit there for a savior and you think that he's gonna come back like the Silver Surfer on the fucking
Yeah,
clouds and shit. Like,
more
honestly,
comic book
come on,
shit.
man. People need to quit like being crazy. Like, it's so obvious what that's talking about. He's gonna return every day, every morning in the clouds for all to see. We're talking about the fucking literal sun here, all right? Not the SON. We're talking about the SUN. And
Yeah,
ain't no goddamn Jesus gonna come back on some damn clouds like some Knight Rider and shit, man.
save your ass or
That's
aliens,
crazy.
you know.
Save your ass from what exactly?
But see, the
This
emotional
miserable
appeal.
experience, I guess.
But see, there's an emotional appeal to it. Like the Christianity for the slaves, it was like, hey, if we can just get through this life and all this turmoil, this toiling in the yard, helping this motherfucker, plant his cotton and shit. If we can just get through this shit, we can die, and then we'll go to paradise to be with Jesus. Well, now they got this new story where
So
it's
why
like,
go through all that shit then? You might as well just off yourself. Why would I want to go if if paradise is after death? If paradise is after death, well, what the fuck? I might as well go right now. Shit.
I know I would. I'd probably end up offing
What I'm gonna sit
myself.
here in a cotton field for? I'm out, motherfucker. Bye.
Yeah, bye. Good luck with your cotton and shit.
But see, they have, but see, they got that covered too, because it's like if you kill yourself, that's a mortal sin.
And
You're
that's
gonna go to
actually
hell.
nowhere in the Bible. That's actually
You're
nowhere
not
in the
gonna
Bible.
go right. You're not gonna go to heaven. That's the thing. You gotta keep picking that cotton, boy.
Yeah, yeah. Because, remember Jesus said to serve your master like you serving the Lord, motherfucker. If you want to go to heaven, you
Yep.
better serve me like you serve Jesus. Because we're one and the
It's the
same in a
very.
way.
It's just so obvious. It's just so obvious who wrote that shit.
Yeah, of course.
That was damn dead. That was not no God. Get out of here.
No, man. And that's evil. There you go. That's part of the evil is wrapped up in
Now
that
that
kind of
we can
shit.
call evil. That's intentional fucking evil right there. That's not even lack of self awareness. That's like intentional, and that's where it becomes evil. That's what we can
Exactly.
call evil right fucking there. When you know better than that and you intentionally are doing shit like that. You're making that decision to be that way. That's evil. And that's kind of you know, what they say.
Said, "Wow, Dub, you took my name, man." Dub says, "Wow,
I'm
this
about to say,
chat took a
Dub, you're in
turn."
two places at one time.
Yeah, my production moniker is Dub Shine. So we've got this other guy named Dub who says, "Wow, this chat took a turn I didn't see coming." Well, we're talking about theism and the problem of evil. Like, if theism, why suffering? So it kind of relates if you think about it, because slavery is entailed in the Bible. The Bible says you can beat your slaves as long as you don't kill them after a few days, as long as they don't die after a few days, you won't be punished because that's your money. That's what it says in Exodus 21:21. So, you know, that's evil to me. It's like if God is this great supervisor who can make anything possible, like Jesus says, anything is possible with God, then God could have created a world without slavery. He could have created his people to thrive in the nation of Israel without having to get their slaves from the nations around them. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And here's Dub. He looks like he's joined us. How's it going, sir?
Going good. This conversation just got a little wacky, I think, but that's all
You think
right.
so? Okay, okay. So what are your
Well, we
thoughts
are a
about the
little bit
conversation?
wacky.
Yeah, we do tend to drift a lot of times. We're very conversational, but do you have any thoughts about the topic?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's almost like if you had like a son or a daughter and they asked you, well, why are you getting on my case? Or, well, why are
Mhm.
you punishing me? Or something to that nature. Then the answer is what? It's because need to be, you need to understand what discipline is. And so it's somewhat similar if you can kind of catch my off put analogy there, but it's somewhat similar in that you need to experience some of the things that aren't maybe don't feel so good, but in the long run, that actually is showing a father's discipline towards a son or a daughter.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
let
but
me
then,
ask you.
but can I ask you a question?
Mhm.
Okay, I understand that, we're going to go through suffering and that's part of life and it kind of helps shape meaning and character and things. We acknowledge that, but when it comes to downright abuse, right? That kind of sounds like what my dad told me. Well, I only did that to make you a better and a stronger person, and in a way it did. But it also broke me for a long time and it could have broke me forever. So, do we justify things like abuse and slavery
Well,
with that logic?
personally, I think that abuse is one thing, slavery is another. Slavery is
So
mentioned.
slavery is an abuse.
Well, I mean, I personally think that people who are out there working for $6 an hour, they are a slave, whether they want to realize it or not. So, I mean, it's still slavery. You're just
So
having a little
is
bit
that
more
abuse?
freedom.
Is
Is that
that
abuse?
abuse and
No,
exploitation?
no,
Why not?
it's a fact of life. Because I mean, okay, so for example, I was told, and this isn't slavery, but I was told in college basically that there's always going to be a certain percentage, maybe it was 3% of the population that's actually going to be homeless. So it's almost like it seems not fair, but these are just the facts of life. Like I said, I view somebody who's working $6 an hour job, you're a slave anyways. Like property
Okay,
taxes, you don't even own your
but if
house. I mean,
but if you're a Christian and you believe that God is this perfect being, perfect all-knowing being, why didn't he create a world that didn't need that? I mean, do you believe that the Africans who were brought over here to America and chattel slavery and all that, you think that that was they deserved that? You think they that needed to happen to them?
well,
Was that
I mean
a life lesson?
that will apparently, in some ways, the answer is going to be yes. But unfortunately, most of the attention that gets thrown towards this deal about slavery is towards white people who are in America. When, as a matter of fact, like there are people that are worshippers of the crescent moon, if you know what I'm saying, that were doing
Mhm.
slavery deals all over the place, and
Oh,
That
we
was
know
to the
wrong
that.
point
We
too.
know
where
that. We touched on that. We've touched on that many times. I already know that, and I can say it out loud. I don't care. I mean, the Arabs fucking enslaved black people before that. We know that,
And
but
black
I'm
people
not trying to
enslaved black
focus.
people,
Yeah,
sold
but I'm
yeah,
saying
their
exactly. I was
people.
about to say that too. Yeah.
we're talking about slavery in general. You think that's something that God wants to happen, and you think that's something that God made a part of His plan? Is that what you think, or do you think that that's just humans doing that?
I just think like it's always existed, and so therefore God allows it. Whether or not somebody wants to say it's moral or immoral, I think that that's easily debated. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think that in the Bible it says that they're supposed to mistreat their slaves. I think it's the exact opposite. But it's okay. I
But it
mean,
says
we
that
can.
you
Do you?
can beat your slave as long as you don't kill him, meaning if he doesn't die within 3 days and survives your beating, it's okay. So you could beat him near death as long as he doesn't die. You think that's moral?
I'll share it on the screen really quick so they know we're not making this up.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Share it on the screen.
yeah, so here we go.
I
I'll
would.
read it. Yep, I'll go ahead and read it. It says, Exodus 21, 20 through 21 says, anyone who beats their male or female slave with a rod must be punished if the slave dies as a direct result, but they are not to be punished if the slave recovers after a day or two, since the slave is their property. Do you think that that's a moral law?
If it's written in the Bible, it is what it is, man. It's obviously uh, something that is being listed as moral there, meaning don't beat your slave to death.
But
I
I'm
mean, that's
asking you,
obviously biblical.
do you think it's
But like I
good
said, you
to
could
beat your
technically
slave?
beat them to near death.
Yeah, your answer is going to be yes, it is, because sometimes a slave just straight up doesn't want to listen. What are you supposed to do after you talk to them and say, please, please do
He's
this? And
fucking
they say,
joking,
no.
right?
All right, you got to be
No,
joking,
I'm
right?
not joking. It's just like your kid. Okay, if you tell your kid to do something
Mr.
and they're like,
B,
"No, I'm not."
Mr. B, Mr.
Hold
B.
up.
Can you please,
Yeah.
can you please turn your camera on? I want you to go down in history for this, and I want to see your goddamn face,
Oh,
so
come
I
on. Whatever.
can hunt you
Hey,
down.
hold on. Wait a second. Hey, Sophia, this is the truth of the matter, though, because if you have a kid, let's say,
Is that the
let's get
truth?
off the slavery. Hold up.
Some
Let's
slaves
get
just
off the.
don't listen. You gotta
All right.
beat
So
them down.
when you're
Man,
Let
ready.
show
let
your
let let,
face,
let him,
boy.
Sophia.
Show
Let
your
him finish
face,
because
boy.
I want to see I want to hear what he's got to say on that because
Oh my God.
honestly, I've heard this a lot, and I know that you've got to pretty much go along with the Bible if you're a Christian. So I understand that you've got to support it, and I just want to hear how you're going to actually support it. So go right ahead.
Okay, Sophia, just give me like a minute and a half, okay? And then
I'm
I'll go
listening.
ahead and say whatever you want. All right, a minute works. Okay, so let's just say you have a son and you're telling him what to do, and he says, "No, I'm not going to do that." And you tell him again, and you say, "This is I'll explain to you exactly why I want you to do that." And then he says, "No, I'm still not going to do it." Okay, eventually the belt comes out, and you get some couple of slaps on the butt. That's just what happens. So that is an example of not a slave, but your own son receiving some kind of discipline for not wanting to obey what is happening. In other words, you can't beg your slave to do something. What do you? That's not a slave at that point. You're actually catering to your slave. So some people need a bit of a, you know, physical something to understand that you don't have any right to tell me no. Son, you don't have any right to tell me no. I'm telling you to go clean your room. Why? I can explain. If you don't want to do it, there will be repercussions, even to your own son, not alone, let alone slavery. I mean, come on. But it does say not to kill, don't kill your slave. That's obviously cruel.
Okay. So, with that being said, there are other methods that we can teach, right? We can teach our children that there's a cause and effect. There's always some kind of, reaction for every action. And we teach our kids responsibility, right? I don't have to beat my son to clean his room. I can say, well, if you don't clean your room, I will take some of your privileges because you have to earn those privileges. I may have spent $600 on a game console for him to be able to enjoy, right? But I'm not going to just give you that if you don't do your own responsibilities of cleaning your own room. And
And I
I
have a
may take that
question.
away from you.
And I
But
have a
slavery is something completely different. Slavery is when you're exploiting someone else that is not even related to you, just a stranger that you see and say, oh, I'm going to make this person my slave. And you're
right.
saying that's
So
moral?
So there's two things here. I wanted to throw a question in here. So there's two things. There's the beating aspect, and then there's the slavery. So the slavery is one question. Is it even moral to own another human as property? That's one question. And even whether
Right.
you beat them or not. But then there's another question, um, because you mentioned that, when you have a child, you spank them on the butt to teach them, a consequence to his action. Well, are they beating slaves on the butt like beating their little kids? Are these slaves kids? Um, what are we talking about when they're talking about beating somebody as long as they don't die after a couple days? It seems like that's a severe beating. That's not just spanking somebody on the butt. That sounds like they're beating somebody, possibly with a stick.
Oh, okay. Okay, I see what you're saying. So there is an example in the Bible where, are you familiar with Moses and the slave that he beat to death?
Yep.
Okay. So the one slave was beating up another slave, and he just basically came over and freaking beat the crap out of him. I mean, so what are you supposed to do? Take away. Okay, so the reason why I don't necessarily like Sophia's example is because understanding that it's not like your kid, they don't have anything to take away. And even if you took away all of their things and they still wanted to be defiant, what are you supposed to do? I mean, you're supposed to teach them in a manner that they're obviously going to understand.
But
Those
that's
are
why
just
he said, is
facts.
it even moral to begin with? That's why he said, is it even moral to begin with to own another human being as a slave?
Well, and like I said, I believe that somebody who's earning basically next to nothing is a slave anyways. They just don't
But
realize
that's
it. They have the
right, but
free.
that's running from the question though. Like we could even agree with you. I could grant you that all that. I could even say that slavery exists today, but that still doesn't answer the question whether it's right.
What is right is just strictly somebody's subjective moral opinion. So,
True,
in an
true.
objective point
But
of view, would be to look at the Bible and try to back it up, right? That's
so let's do an internal critique. So in because I would tend to agree with you that morals and everything like that, morals, ethical codes, laws are subject to the nations that you live, to the person you are, things of that nature, right? And we can say most people would agree that owning people as property is wrong. But still, that would be subjective to, maybe the present moment. Maybe in the future slavery would be just fine, like it was in the past. Who's to say? But if we're going to
But then
if
we
we're
can say
going to
murder is just
assume,
fine too, right? It's fine too.
well, I
Child
was right.
molestation is just fine too. Where do we draw
Yeah,
the
where do you
line?
draw the line? Right. I was going to say, where do you draw the line? But again, let's go ahead and grant Dub that molesting kids is another. It's just an opinion. Molesting, raping babies is just an opinion.
no,
If
okay,
it's wrong or
no. I
right, it's
mean,
just
come
an
on, man.
opinion, right?
What's the
Okay,
Well,
difference?
I
so
mean, where do you
somebody,
draw the line? Are you saying that slavery's okay, but raping babies or killing babies is not? Let me ask you this: did God ever command the killing of infants?
yeah.
Yeah, He did, didn't He?
So that's
So
okay.
we can't say that that's wrong, can we?
Well, you don't know the reasoning behind why that command was given. That's
So
the
what
hardest part.
So as long as
what?
God
So
says
so
it,
it's so
it's
it's
right.
right. So it's relative. So you're saying that morals are relative to the situation.
Well, what if? Okay, so here's a problem. That okay, I'll try to make a
Well, I mean,
comparison
answer
here.
that question
If you
first. If
would,
is killing people relative to context, like killing infants? Is killing an infant right or wrong depending on the situation? Yes or no?
yes, it is, and that's why I was gonna say basically like, so let's say Sophia, if you were alive back in Hitler's day and he was an infant and you knew what he was gonna do, what would you do to him? Just throw him in a locker, or I mean,
Hold
so
on.
what I'm
Can
trying to
you
say
say
is,
that? Can you repeat that? Can you repeat that, please?
yeah, I said if you were alive back in Hitler's day and you met him as an infant and knew what he was going to do, what would you do to him? So
As an
what am
infant?
I? You don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to reply to that. It's just it's a rhetorical question, okay? So don't respond because you don't need to tell me what you would have wanted to do to him. But it's the same idea in the Bible where it
No, I'm
says,
just saying an infant doesn't even have that capability.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm saying if you know that it was Hitler and you knew exactly what he was going to do, so that's the situation. And again, you don't have to answer. It's just a rhetorical question. But
But
the
it's kind of a good
comparison,
question. It's a good
I'm
question.
confused about
I
that
think
question, though.
I think I get what he's driving at, and it's a good
Can
question.
you break that
We
down for me, Scott? Because I'm confused.
right. So here's the thing. We know that Hitler went and gassed, millions of people, killed millions of people, did a lot of harm in the world. So having that foreknowledge that Hitler was going to do all this stuff, if you're a moral person, what would you do? Would you get rid of Hitler so that you could save those millions of people? or would you let the baby live? Well, this kind of gets to the point of what we're talking about. God also had foreknowledge that Hitler was going to kill those millions of people. Why didn't God kill Hitler as an infant?
Right. Why not get rid of the problem to save millions?
Okay, so then it's getting right back to the main subject that you have listed on your title, right? Why does suffering, why is it allowed? And
And
it
let's
is
use
allowed
grape,
because
yeah. Yeah. Instead of the R word, let's use the grape. Just sorry, go ahead.
oh, I
Just
didn't
so
say
we don't
that,
get
did I?
flagged, Yeah, I did. I
Oh, I
did
didn't.
though. So yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of complicated to understand, but um, basically, like Christians are supposed to live under the rules of their authorities and stuff, but also if they move to a particular land, they're supposed to obey the law of that land as well. So it's it's it's
Well,
complicated, but it's like if you
well,
see
it's
these
it.
sufferings happening,
You're. It sounds like you're turning yourself into a pretzel to answer a very simple question.
what was
The
the
thing
question?
is that the question is if Hitler, if God had the foreknowledge like we do, looking
Mhm.
in the past. That's the reason you brought up that example, which was a good
Yeah, yeah,
question.
correct,
You said
correct.
that Hitler killed millions of
Hmm.
people, right?
Hmm.
Knowing what we know now, I think your point is you're implying that what would you do? Wouldn't you do like God did and kill an infant in that case? Because after all, the situation would call for it. That was the point. That was the impact of that question.
Hmm.
But you got to understand, God knows all things, does he not? Does God know the future?
That's correct. That's why I'm saying back in the
Right.
Bible, it said to get rid of all these infants and everything
Well, why
because
didn't
if
God
you
get rid of Hitler?
just hold on. So now, because he gave the order and those people actually didn't do it, it caused the destruction because they let those infants live, or they let whatever, they took a couple of women instead of annihilating all of them, and that caused the destruction in the future to happen. So he was
Well,
giving a command, but it was almost like saying, this over here, this is a clan of Hitlers, and none of them will ever turn out to be anything good. Go
what
annihilate
about the
them.
donkey? What about the sheep and the donkeys?
There obviously nothing good was going to come out of them either.
It just seems very post hoc rationalization. It's like after the fact, we can always make excuses for God, but he didn't say any of that. That's adding to the story.
I didn't add to the story at all. I don't
Because
need to know.
remember, did
I
did
don't need
the
to have
infants were not Samuel didn't kill the infants as it turned out. Remember? And that's
exactly.
why
That's
that's
what I'm
why
saying.
that's why God was mad with Samuel. He didn't obey. But those infants didn't turn out to be little mini Hitlers, did they?
How do you know?
Because it wasn't expressed in history or in the Bible or anywhere. We didn't hear about anything like that.
Oh yeah, there for sure that is listed for sure.
Okay, show
Where?
me where that's listed.
I don't have the verse offhand. I'm sorry, but I
I
know
know
that
you
there's a
don't
group.
because it's
They're
not
called.
really
I think they're
there.
called. I think. Hold on. I think they're called Amalekites,
Yeah,
and they ended up
not all
being.
Amalekites turned out to be little mini Hitlers. I never read that.
So where does it say that they turn out to do anything good?
Well, it didn't say either way. That's not the point. The
Yeah,
point is
yeah,
that
it
you
did
made a
actually. I'm
claim.
trying.
You made a claim.
I'm trying.
You said that.
I'm trying to tell
Well,
you it is in there. So
hold on one second. You made an ad hoc claim that God was
ad
going to
hoc.
get rid of these infants because possibly they would have turned into little Hitlers. As it turns out in the story, Samuel didn't do that, and God was mad because Samuel didn't follow Yahweh's order to kill all the infants, donkeys, mules, and all that stuff.
Hmm.
And they did not turn out to be any sort of Hitlers. No, they didn't go out and commit atrocities like Hitler or anything like that was spoken of in the Bible. It didn't say they did anything good either, but who cares? We don't know what they did. So I'm not really sure how you're connecting those dots, is what I'm saying. Samuel
I
15 is the
realize
book.
that. I realize that, but here, even if I just looked it up on Google, it says I said I put in Amalekites were not destroyed and caused destruction. It says the Bible records God's command to Israelites completely destroy the Amalekites due to their persistent hostility towards Israel and their wickedness. However, biblical accounts suggest the Amalekites were not completely eradicated, and their actions continued to pose a threat to Israel. So these are people where it's almost like you can say, well, if they're posing a threat to Israel, Hitler, as an example, obviously posed a threat to Israel. Maybe he's an Amalekite, and we just don't know that. So, it,
Yeah, but we
but
can't base we can't base claims off what we don't know. I mean,
but
the
that
deeper
that
the
is what we
deeper
do. What we do know is the Amalekites continued to cause a threat to Israel when God told them eliminate all of them, and they didn't. So they didn't listen. Therefore, these little Hitlers are going to continue to be a thorn in their side.
Yeah, but
You know,
I just don't know where you're what you're basing that on. I understand the ad hoc rationalization. I understand
there's
how
no
you're
ad
trying to
hoc
reason that.
rationalization. It's in the Bible, dude. You can read it for
So
yourself.
again,
I mean,
what's the give me the chapter verse. Let's go over it.
okay, let me find it. In the meantime, I guess you guys can talk there.
So, and then, so we can go into an even deeper question. So all of this having to kill infants, having to kill donkeys and mules, because of the evil that they decided to do. Remember, God is the first cause. So at least he's got to be somewhat responsible. If you want to say that humans have free will, God allowed it, okay, fine. But wouldn't you say God was at least partially responsible for the evil and things that happen in the world? What do you say, Dub?
No, God is not responsible for evil. It's just as simple as that. And does a no suffice for you?
Yeah, I can accept what you said, but it just kind of flies in the face of the Bible,
Okay,
you
well then
know?
you can read something. You can read something like Job chapter 1 and 2, and that would explain it better than I can.
Well, we will. I just pulled something up to kind of back up what I was gonna say, so I'll share it on the screen so you can see it. Um, this is a Bible verse that comes from Isaiah 45:7 in the King James Version. It says, I form the light, I and create darkness, I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. So in fact, God does create evil. So you're wrong there. The Bible says God does create
So
Well,
he
God
catastrophes,
creates
creates.
evil just
calamities,
to
evil.
destroy it.
No,
Why would he create evil just so he?
What verse
Go
were
ahead.
you reading? Sorry.
Isaiah 45:7.
Okay, hold on.
I'll put it up on the screen again if you want.
No, it's fine. I'll pull it up.
You want to pull up a different version that doesn't have evil in there, right?
No, I want to pull up the version that I'm familiar with reading for
Let's try
sure,
the
though.
new translation.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, exactly. The version that I read is the NASB 95, and that supposedly is the most word for word. Uh, you
Are
can
you sure
actually
about that?
read. It says, yeah.
Well, it doesn't
So
matter
it
to
says
me
the
because it
one
still
forming.
says something. Go
So
ahead.
no. So what it says is the one forming light and creating darkness, causing well-being and creating calamity. I am the Lord who does all of these. So the problem that you're going to encounter is that God admits that He creates um, basically his creation includes those who do good and those who do bad, but that's just a fact of life. He doesn't make them do evil; they do it on their own volition
But it
because they
says
have
he
free will.
No,
created it.
it says it says he creates the calamity.
Hmm. Yeah, create. It says
He creates
causing
it. So
well
he's
and creating calamity. So there are different creatures that he creates that have certain attributes, and some of them create calamity. That's what it's saying.
right. So the way I look at it, I try not to use pretzel logic. I try to just read it for what it says. And it says that he creates the calamity, or in the Hebrew word for
Pretzel.
pretzel, and he creates the evil. If you look at the Hebrew word for evil, which was used in the translation, And that's why the King James used it. A lot of people say that the King James is actually the most uh, correct version to take, but I'm not even going to argue that. I don't
So
have
What's
to.
the Jewish
Erase the
Torah
evil, the
say?
light. The point is that God has got to be responsible, at least partially responsible, for bringing about calamity and bringing about darkness in the world. Just admit it.
look at if you look at James 1:13, it says, "Let no one say when he is tempted, I am being tempted by God." That's the best way I can put it. So obviously, if you read Job 1 and 2, you will see that
Hmm.
there is another part of creation that causes the temptations for people to fall and do things they shouldn't do. So God is allowing these things to happen for a reason, but it's not of His doing. His tempting is not of His doing. So when someone's tempted, that's usually when they fall and do something
Satan.
evil. Yeah,
So yeah, so yeah, so you're saying that God allows evil, right? And He doesn't.
I'm saying that
So when does
God does not tempt, but He does allow people their free will. Yeah,
so let me ask you this: why does God intervene sometimes on the evil and other times He doesn't intervene?
it's a question that you would have to address with God.
Well, I mean, you have the Holy Spirit. Do you believe in the Holy Spirit?
Yeah, I do believe in the Holy Spirit.
So how do you interpret that based on the Holy Spirit, or how do you, or what? How do you interpret the Bible? What helps you interpret the Bible? How are we supposed to trust your interpretation over, say, a Calvinist interpretation of that?
A Calvinist, they believe that they're like once saved, always saved. So my
Yeah, but
example would be, hold on, just hold on, buddy. You have to allow me to like
no. Well, I
pretzel
just want to get you back on track with the question. I
back
understand what
on
they
track,
believe.
bro. I
I'm
didn't
not.
even get to answer anything.
Well, but I'm saying you're
Okay,
trying to tell me what they believe. I understand what they believe. I'm asking
so
what tools do
so
you
hold on.
use?
Oh my goodness. So
Go ahead.
listen, if everyone in the world believed like they did and said we're all saved, we're always going to be saved, okay? So then they would have to explain verses that basically say, we're separating the sheep from the goats now, and Lord, some will come and say, Lord, Lord, and then the other ones, some will get saved and some won't. So that eliminates the Calvinist position automatically off the bat. It's done. So you need to understand that bringing the Calvinist situation in this doesn't really make much sense. But okay.
But see, you're I think you're missing the whole point. You've got Calvinists, you've got Jehovah's Witnesses, you've got
Uh huh.
Mormons, you've got
So
Protestants, Catholics.
you
You've
just
got all of these folks. Hold on, they're just interpreting the Bible in different ways. That's the only point I'm making. They're all going to
I
disagree with
understand.
how they interpret.
Okay.
So I'm asking you, as Dub, what is your method for interpreting the Bible?
I just told you that you brought up Calvinist as an example, and I gave you an example from the Bible to tell the how they are wrong. So I don't
Do you think
understand how I didn't already answer this question.
Okay. Do you think, okay, then my mistake. Do you think that Calvinists could say the same thing about you?
They can, but they won't have the evidence to back it up.
Well, that's what the Calvinists would say about you too. So so as a person on the outside, how am I supposed to think about that?
I just told you, if everyone in the world was converted to a Calvinist, they would all believe that they are saved, and therefore they would negate verses that say, Lord,
You're not
Lord, did we not do this? Did we not do that? And he's going to say, Get away from me, you evildoers, I never knew you. So that
Yep.
means if everyone converted to Calvinist, they would believe everyone is saved, which is proven incorrect by the verse that I just showed you. It's
Right.
called the parable of the sheep and the goats.
So what you're telling me
Okay,
is
I
that
get
there's
what you're
certain
saying. You're
Bibles
saying that you
there's
you're saying
certain
that
verses.
if their doctrine he Scott, he's saying if their doctrine doesn't fall in line with the Bible, then they're wrong because he used the Bible
Bingo!
scripture to disprove them. Okay, so let's move past that.
Hmm.
What about all the other denominations like Seventh day Adventists? Why are there so many different interpretations of the Bible in general? How do we know, you know, who's actually right? let's say what is your denomination anyway?
I'm Catholic.
Okay, you're Catholic. So most Christians don't agree with Catholics either. And then Catholics have different books in their Bible as well, right?
Hold on. Most Christians are actually Catholic, so that doesn't make any sense to make
Well,
that claim.
what about like Christian apologists and stuff? Like I'm talking about all other
Protestants.
Christians. They don't, they don't agree with Catholicism, right?
Yeah. So
And
okay,
then
I'll give you an example. I think I
like
see
I
what
just
you're getting
asked,
at.
like you, okay,
I
like
think I
also the
see.
books part. Don't your books have different books in it other than like the 66
66, right?
books?
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So let me give you an example of one of the books that is not accepted from these other denominations. It's called the Book of Wisdom, or otherwise known as the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 2. If you go read it and read the rest of it too, to try to see if there are any errors, or when you compare the book to the rest of the books, if there's anything conflicting or contradicting, then that book wouldn't be included. But specifically, Book of Wisdom, chapter 2, it basically describes what Jesus went through to a T. So it just is what it is. Some people, the reason why I think there's so many denominations, money. That's why I think there is. But my personal opinion, or they just
Okay, so
haven't
do
been
you
given
think?
the spirit.
Okay, so you think that Catholicism is the one true religion of the one true God, right?
That's a tough question. I'm gonna say yes, of course, but even Catholicism itself allows for certain scenarios in which it's basically like people don't know what they're doing. So I would point to Revelation chapter 2 and 3 to see that there are multiple churches, one of them ultimately coming up to another one and saying, "We were wrong, you were right." So, but there are churches, maybe that have most of their doctrine is correct. I don't know. I mean, but I do know that I believe
Okay, so
Catholicism.
you're saying Catholicism does allow for, error and disagreements or whatever.
Yeah, it basically says something to the effect of, and I'm not a scholar on this by far. I don't really read all of the things that they say, but it basically says people who wish they were Catholic, but then they were not able to join for whatever reason, but they pretty much followed all the same teachings. Those would be considered people who have like some kind of leeway or something.
So they'd
Okay.
still be saved, in other words.
Yeah, that's correct, according to my understanding of it.
So
Okay.
I'm gonna step out of the internal critique and kind of go into um a
Here's one
deeper
thing though,
question.
before you go there, because I
Hmm.
I, I was catching on to something Sophia was saying, and so it's basically like this. I believe in infant baptism. There are people that don't believe in that because they say, number one, an infant cannot understand things. Well, then I'd point to Elizabeth, who had her son jump in the womb when Mary came into the room. So obviously, even in the womb, kids can understand things. Second piece would be 1 Corinthians 10:2. It speaks of the baptism of Moses. Well, all people left Egypt, so that means they didn't leave their infants behind, and it refers to it as a baptism unto Moses. So there is a baptism where infants are included. There's just not a lot of people that like to admit that that's the case.
Okay.
Okay.
Um, so I wanted to kind of dig a little deeper on that since we're talking about interpretations of the Bible and things of that nature. Um,
Sure.
so as unbelievers, why should we even believe in the Bible at all, especially when it
Well,
contradicts itself?
Scott, it doesn't contradict itself, but however, what you're going to come to the conclusion on this is, and I already have, is that faith is a postulate. So I can't really prove it to you, but you can't disprove it to me. So you
Do
believe in,
contradictions
I don't know.
do do
You're starting out with a
contradictions
there are no
um
contradictions.
okay, there are
No.
no contradictions. Okay, can I share one with you real quick?
Go ahead.
Okay. So Mark 15:25, I'll put it up on the screen. NIV, I think that's the one you like, right?
No, I like the
Um
NSB 95.
Okay, well, it says basically the same thing.
Uh-huh.
Mark 15:25 says it was 9 in the morning when they crucified him, talking about Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay. However, if you go over to John 19:14, and I'll go ahead and share that. Hold on just a second.
Hmm.
Let me stop the screen. It takes a little time to do this. Let me pull this up. Come on. So we got 9 in the morning is when Jesus was crucified, okay?
Hmm.
But at John 19:14 says it was the day of preparation of the Passover. It was about noon. Here is your king, Pilate said to the Jews. So he was being tried um, before,
Right.
well after 9 in the morning. So which one is correct?
Okay. So I believe Matthew also has um, a testament to this as well. And if you look in the footnotes, it lists a specific time. So there is something to do with a 3-hour difference in the translation. I don't remember exactly what it is, but if you went to, let's say, for example, Amos 8:9, it says the sun will go down at noon. So I'm leaning towards the noon, but again, there are footnotes to kind of explain this. I don't know if you see the footnotes on the page.
Yeah, I'm not interested in the footnotes. I'm interested in what the scripture says. The scripture says at Mark 15:25, it was 9 in the morning when they crucified
Yeah.
him. John 19:14 says it was about
Uh-huh.
noon when he was being tried, well before he was crucified. So it seems like that's a contradiction.
Hey,
It's not
Dub,
a contradiction at all. Yeah, go ahead.
can I also read you a few contradictions just to throw it out there? And then you can
No,
refute me at any time.
yeah, that's not a problem. However, if you're just going off of somebody's Google thing who is saying
I'm going off the
these are
scriptures. I mean,
contradictions,
the
these are
thing is, we're
No, I'm
contradictions,
using
going
and
the thing.
directly.
The
I'm
thing
going
you're
is,
actually
Dub,
hold
directly
a
on,
to
lot
hold
of
the
on,
people.
hold on,
scripture.
hold
Well,
on, hold
I
on.
want to
Let me
address
make
that
a point.
because
Let me make a
you.
point. Let me make a point. It's
Well,
because
okay,
you're
okay.
doing.
I hold
Oh
hold hold
God.
on, Dub. Just a second. I'm gonna let you speak. I just want to say that the reason we're using Google is because we're on the internet. It's the only resource I'm able to share. But go ahead.
Exactly. And so the problem that you're encountering is you're reading the Bible as if it's a book, and you're not trying to dig deeper into what the meaning actually could be. You're just reading it like a book. So why not just read Cat in the Hat and go discuss that with people? Because it doesn't.
Well,
It's not
because
Well,
we have
that's
you
interesting.
here.
Nobody's
actually not
listening.
true because I don't know how long you were watching, but just earlier I said that. I said that scriptures shouldn't be read like any other book. That there are a lot of
Okay,
allegories in it, and so I actually made that distinction earlier on, and that's not where I'm coming
excellent.
from. But then there are some things that are just downright seemingly contradictory, and maybe you could help shed light on that
Hmm.
because
Perfect.
if
So,
you wanted to if you wanted to, help someone become a believer, you could,
mhm.
demonstrate your method and see what you would say to, because I mean, that's part of
I
the
agree.
faith, right? Okay. So, like, yeah, it's not an attack. We're just trying to get to the bottom of certain things like that,
Oh,
right? And
I
I was just
understand.
going to
So,
go through.
I
Okay.
understand.
So,
So
is
let me
that
address.
okay?
Hold on. Yeah, yeah, it will be. Hold on one sec. Let me continue to address Scott. So I'm looking at my Bible right here, and it says Matthew 27:45. Now from
Hmm.
the 6th hour, darkness fell upon all the land until the 9th hour. Now, in the footnotes, it says, i.e., 12 noon and 3 p.m. So there's also a difference there. But the problem is you're willing to go look these what are apparent contradictions. You're willing to look them up, but you're not willing to go on the internet in order to actually figure out for yourself why these things are considered contradictions. It's because people are bringing these supposed contradictions up who don't actually care to go into the meaning as to why these things would be occurring. So
Well,
That's
that's
the
why you're
problem. And
here.
I don't have
That
all the answers to all these things.
so
We have an
again,
example right there where
well,
in verse 45 it says the sixth hour, but before six it lists a one, which is a footnote, and it says i.e. 12 noon, and then darkness fell upon the land until the ninth hour, and it says 3 p.m. Now I've looked this up before and I figured it out, but I totally it got out of my mind because it's like, okay, there is a contradiction here. No, it's not a contradiction. I don't recall exactly why I was able to sit there and figure it out, but I mean, you could do that online, like I said. It's not
so
that difficult.
so I'm still kind of confused. So if you look at what is it, Matthew, if I remember, 27, what was it, 45 or something like that, right?
Yep.
Something like from noon until maybe 3 or 4 in the afternoon. That's when this darkness, the darkness came over. Jesus, said, "Hey, God, why have you forsaken me?" Blah blah blah. And he's calling Elijah, I think, is what the spirit of the scripture was, right? But remember, in Mark, it said that he was crucified at 9 in the morning. So which one is it? Is it 9 in the morning or is it noontime?
Again, they have ways to communicate these things. I'd have to look it up again, obviously, but
Okay, okay. Well, let's get off that. I mean, that's probably not going to
now
affect your
see,
theology so much.
well, you also have differences in time zones here. So if somebody's writing and they're writing from, let's say, Greece, is Greece in a different time zone than uh,
Yeah, I heard that
Israel is?
before.
So that's a point. Well, it's a point. I mean, I don't know. I have no clue. So that
Again,
could be one of the reasons. Um,
I'm just
there
saying,
could be
just try to
multiple reasons.
understand. So just really the point that I'm
Okay,
making is
okay,
from
here we go.
from
I figured it out. I figured it out. I figured it out. So, um, time according to uh, like the Old Testament, it's not quite how we do it. So, for us, it would be 12 at night is the beginning of a new day. So, the issue here is that they used to go by daytime as being the beginning of a day. You understand? So, the time would actually be fast forwarded into a different meaning. So, when somebody says 6 a.m. right now, they would consider that as just the beginning of the morning, the beginning of the day. So that would mean by the time 12 would come, they might refer to it as 6 o'clock instead of 12 o'clock. Do you understand?
hmm
Okay.
So 9 a.m. means noon, is what you're saying in the language.
9 a.m. means noon. Well, maybe that was written by somebody who was in Greece and he was 3 hours ahead or behind or whatever. I can't explain all of it. All I can say is within the Matthew 27:45, um, it would be saying that instead of starting the clock at 12 midnight, which we are counting nighttime as the beginning of a day, they're counting the sun rising is the beginning of the day. So that's when time starts during that
Okay.
day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's another question related to that then. Um, because if God wants his message to be so clear, why do we have to go through so much mental gymnastics to make it make sense? Like from someone who's sitting on the side, we're just reading the scriptures. Do you have to have like a scholarly, reference to go along with the Bible for it to make sense? Like why does God make it so unclear if he really wants his message to be clear?
Because God doesn't want people to treat the book that was written like a cat in a hat. He wants you to think about it. He wants you to go through it slowly. If you find contradictions or something you believe is a contradiction, go search for the answer so that you are for sure in your mind, you can eliminate what are these supposed contradictions based on your own deductions that you can come up with. And I'm not saying that
All
they're
right,
actually your own. If you pray on these things, then the Spirit will help you figure it out.
Bingo! That's where we're
but
getting
then
at.
I ask,
So,
hold on, I would like to ask something.
hmm
So this is just one contradiction. There are many that are seemingly contradictions. So I'm asking you as a parent, right? Like, because you brought up earlier, how you need to discipline your child and use the whole parent child relationship as a example, right? So as a parent, if I want to guide my child, would I say things clearly to my child, or would I make things complicated that leaves my child confused and guessing, and then gaslight my child and say, well, that's on you to dig deeper to figure out what the hell I said? Why would I do that as a parent? I would try to lay it out as simple as I possibly could. I wouldn't confuse my child by telling them one thing and then saying
Hmm.
something else. So that's what we're saying. Like, if a divine, all knowing God inspired the Bible, why is there so much stuff in it that just seems to not add up and contradicts itself? And that's all we're, and so if asking those questions alone is a problem or causes someone to be upset, then there's no wonder people don't possibly want anything to do with it.
See, but the problem is I'm not getting upset. It's just when I'm trying to speak, like I'm not meaning to cut you off, but it seems like some of these things that you guys are saying are kind of long-winded. I'm sure you get the same thing from me. That's the tough part about being online versus face to face. It's a little tough to see people's intentions, but by no means am I angry. I'm just sitting here going, like, I just was thinking about the time thing, right? And I said, I forgot the reason why. I already figured out this isn't a contradiction. Then it popped in my head, and I'm like, hey, guys, I found it. You know, I'm trying my
Hmm.
best to relay what I know,
I
but
appreciate
I
that,
don't
Okay,
know
Bible.
and
it all.
I acknowledge that, but I was just trying to make it a little more general so we don't have to get stuck on one little thing here. I was just trying to make it a little broader. So just in
Right.
general, why would a God, an all-knowing God, write things down so complicated to where so many different people can interpret it in so many different ways? And where do we even draw the line here? How do we even know who's right anymore? Like, do you understand what I mean? As an outsider looking in, I don't understand any of this. I would have to study this for a lifetime and only have time for that to really be able to understand who's telling the truth, who doctored it, who freaking twisted something here and there, what's original, what's not original. I mean, if God is this all knowing, powerful being, isn't there a simpler way to just convey the truth to his creation?
Well, I think that's basically when he's at the well with the lady. He says that the Father is looking for those who worship in what is it?
Spirit and
Spirit
truth.
and truth, I think.
Yep.
Right.
Spirit and
So
truth.
it it's basically
So
like
we don't really need the
somebody
words,
who
right?
no, you need the words because then how would you know the truth, right?
So
But then,
If you didn't
before
have the
people
words,
wrote
how
and
somebody
write,
think?
before people developed language, did they know God at all in any kind of way?
Not that I'm aware of.
So God created beings that at some point couldn't read and write, and so they were just completely godless until language came around.
Where did you get that from, though? Because it says Adam and Eve were the first two to be created, so
but did
I'm
they
not
write
understanding
stuff
where you're
down?
coming
Well,
from.
well,
Because you said,
scientifically
I,
speaking, uh, humans been around for a long time, and language is something that was developed over time.
well, I mean, they used to write pictographs on rocks. I mean, obviously they knew how to communicate with each other. You don't need to be able to write, in a specific language like we have today to be able to write a picture and somebody goes, "Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. I remember that on that specific hill. We called that hill whatever, and I remember whatever hill. That picture reminds me of it." So they can communicate, obviously. But
Right?
I mean, I still don't
So
understand the question
now we
because
have this
you're saying
now we have this
you're
complex
saying
language in this huge book, and it's completely confusing in many parts, and you think that God ended up resorting to that way of communicating. Oh, that's all I'm asking.
so. It's basically like you're saying. why is it so complicated? And the
Well, I
reason
think
why
Well,
I
because
would
there are a
say
lot
let
of
that it's
let
contradictions.
complicated,
well let's get
Let's
back
take,
on
for
because there
track.
are.
example,
So
the resurrection of.
Hold on,
Dub
let me
said
pretzel here real
Dub's
quick.
okay.
Let me pretzel for a second. Okay,
Okay, go ahead.
the answer would be that it's written so complicated so that you realize who you are. You are not perfect, so on and so forth. Jesus knew the ins and the outs. He knew everything. So that's why they said he calls himself Son of God. He is equal with God. Therefore, we should kill him. For some reason, they came up with that. But Jesus knew all of the laws so well, they would accuse him of breaking the law when he's like, "No, I'm the Lord of the Sabbath. How can I actually break the law at all?" So the reasoning is to make you realize that you are not the end all be all. You need to humble yourself in front of God, and then maybe you will get some answers, to the questions that you have. I've looked at verses and thought about them for months, and then finally I'm like, oh, you read a little bit more, and you're like, this makes sense. But you need to put in the time if you want to, right? If you're interested in it, you can put in the time and try to help people in their understanding. It's not necessarily that you have to do that, but it just kind of that's the reason I come up with it.
Okay, so what about like tribal people who had no idea about this God of yours, who lived peacefully amongst each other, and they had no idea about your language? Did they need to be humbled to seek out this God of yours?
That's a good question. It's more something I can't answer because I don't want to give you my subjectivity. Is just going to say, as far as I know, if somebody doesn't believe in Jesus, they're in big trouble. That's all I can tell you about that. I mean, I ask, how do people get judged? And I'm like, well, I'm not the actual judge, so I can't tell you what ultimately happens, who gets excused, who doesn't. I can tell you that there are examples in the Bible where I can show you. Okay, for example, let's go here. So David and Bathsheba, are you familiar with that story?
Yes.
Barely. It's been a long time since I've been a Christian.
Yes, when he had her
Okay,
killed,
so
her husband killed or
David is
whatever.
eyeing a wife of one of his basically companions. Okay, he sends that front lines and he gets killed. So he takes her as wife, right? You with me
Oh
so
yeah,
far?
I know that story. Yeah, yeah, I remember that.
Okay, okay. So I'm gonna bring up to you here is basically to say they had a kid together. Kid lasted, or I shouldn't say that. I should say he lived for 7 days. Now, circumcision happens on the eighth day, and that circumcision piece, something to do with the law, is pretty important. However, David says he will go to where his son goes. And so, if you ask me, I say David went to heaven. But at the same time, his kid was not circumcised. So, where does he go? So God will do whatever he wants to do in terms of sorting things out, like your question is. He will have mercy on whoever he wants. Because somebody who wants to be a legalist will say, well, that kid wasn't circumcised on the eighth day. Well, he wasn't even alive but for 7 days, anyways. So, and you want to say you want to be legal about this? Okay, well, how about David was the one who committed the adultery, and what do people would have killed David, and then Jesus never comes because that's so it's important to not try to be so much of a legalist that you don't leave room for God's judgment in terms of, well, these people were living as Aztecs here or there or whatever. You know what I mean? It's important to leave room for God's judgment and not to sit here and go, oh, I know exactly what happens. Well, the only thing I can go off of is to say, as far as I know, if you don't believe in Jesus, you're in trouble. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and I don't agree with that because that means I have to turn my back on my culture that is natural to me, you know, things that help me thrive and find harmony within my family. And I'm supposed to just humble
Yes.
myself to God, to your God, who says that my way is false.
Well, actually,
That's,
what you're referring to there is an example in the Bible. Do you feel that the 12 apostles or anyone who was a believer during that time, they didn't have to do the exact same thing? These are all people who are accusing the 12 apostles and everyone else that was a follower, that they are polytheists because they believe Jesus is God and that the Father is God and that the Spirit is God. Well, that's a Trinity, three in one. So
Yeah, but
they
I
had to
would
leave
just
all
like
the.
to know concretely what is wrong with other people's different ways of life. We adapt to our environments. People that live in hot climates have completely different customs from people who live in places where it snows. They may develop different type of customs. I'm just saying, like, what do you mean? I mean, we didn't even know who this God is that you're talking about. So we were just in touch with what we call, you know, divine spirit or nature or whatever. We were guided through nature. And it even says in the Bible to observe nature and that nature will speak to you and that you will know how to be like from
Yeah,
within. Who
I hear
needs
what you're saying.
who needs a mediator to tell you, oh, it's wrong to covet someone else's wife and then have her husband killed so you can have sex with her? Who got to tell you that? Somebody got to tell you that in a written document? I mean, who got to tell you that it's not okay to murder your brother out of jealousy? Right. Who has to tell you that? I would say that, someone who needs that written down already has a serious problem. So that's my problem with that. There are people who live in perfect peace and harmony, but for some reason, because they don't know about this Jesus God, they
Mhm.
need to be snatched out of their environment, displaced, put into slavery, forced a language on them that they don't even know, and abandon their own. And you're justifying all of this because your Bible tells you so?
No, you're throwing the slavery thing in there because that's just what happens in today's society. Now, I will agree with some of the things
I'm
that you said
throwing the
there.
slavery thing. I
However,
said a lot of things, and you chose to focus on just the slavery. I'm saying
go ahead.
uprooting people, telling them to abandon everything about their way of life. I mean, what God created all of that, right? He created every tribe, every nation on the planet, right? And then he
Yes, but
chose
he
one little nation. Then he chose one little nation that is superior to everyone else to put everyone else in line. That's what you believe.
okay, Sophia, please try not to. I believe gish gallop is what the word is. So it means that you're basically piling on your evidence in which I respond because you've already put forth 5 points. I like to deal with point 1 point by 1 point if we can, because now I've already forgotten what you said. But so I mentioned the slavery first, but then I wanted to go into because you're saying, does it need to be written down for people not to do this or that? Yeah, it kind of does because now apparently people don't even know what a woman is. It's kind of weird. Now,
People don't know what?
such
Hold
a
on. You're
thing.
breaking up. I'm
You're breaking
sorry.
up. You're breaking up.
People do
You
not
said
know
people
what
don't
a
know.
woman is. What a
Some
woman
people, yeah.
is.
Mm-hmm.
Are
Mm-hmm.
you kidding me? Yeah, so then things obviously need to be written down so that we can look back and go, when did this
Has it
ridiculous, crazy, nutso
has it been written down what
thing
a
about,
woman is?
yeah, for sure.
So has that
So
helped
it's
the
written down,
situation?
right?
Yeah,
So it didn't help. Anyways,
it
I
didn't
wanted to go
help.
into this other thing. We were talking about the Bible and trying to not gish gallop. So I wanted to kind of just to kind of explain something that why some of the Bible causes questions, if anything. Take for example Deuteronomy. Now this came from the commands of God, right? The mind of God wrote this in the Old Testament. Deuteronomy 22:13 through 21 says, suppose a man marries a young woman and later he decides he doesn't want her. So he makes up false charges against her, accusing her of not being a virgin when they got married. If this happens, the young woman's parents are to take the blood-stained wedding sheet that proves she was a virgin, and they are to show it in court to the town leaders. Her father will say to them, I gave my daughter to this man in marriage, and now he doesn't want her. He has made false charges against her, saying she was not a virgin when he married her. But here is the proof that my daughter was a virgin. Look at the bloodstains on the wedding sheet. Then the town leaders are to take the husband and beat him. They are also to find him 100 pieces of silver and give the money to the young woman's father, because the man has brought disgrace on an Israelite woman. Moreover, she will continue to be his wife, and he can never divorce her as long as he lives. But if the charges is true and there is no proof that she was a virgin, then they are to take her out to the entrance of her father's house, where the men of her city are to stone her to death. She has done a shameful thing among our people by having intercourse before she was married, while she was still living in her father's house. In this way, you will get rid of this evil. So the question I have is, because we know that actually, as it turns out, 40% of virgins actually don't bleed, as it turns out. So there's a lot of women that were stoned to death who may have actually been virgins. How do we recognize this? Because these women may have also been accused of being evil. So for something like this causes
Seems like
questions.
seems like writing things down like that causes more harm than good. And
Yeah, it's
there's
really
I
actually
hard.
a
don't
movie called The
disagree with
Stoning of
you.
Soroya M.
Hmm.
So here's the problem that you have with science in general, is that anything some scientist is going to say, how do you actually prove that they're telling you the truth?
Okay, so we're gonna be
Because
anti-science,
you
and plus we have experience. There can be women who say that they didn't bleed when they had their first intercourse. They know by
Hmm.
experience that that's wrong. They don't have to appeal to science
So
necessarily.
is this a question that like comes up often for women? I don't know. Sophia, did anyone ever ask you the first time that you had sex, did you bleed?
That's beside the point.
well, if you want to know the honest
It's
truth,
not beside the point
I
because
was
this is
raped
what actually
for the first time I had sex, and I did not bleed, and I was 12.
I don't
But
want to
when
hear
I
your I don't
was
want to hear your
26,
personal story. I'm sorry, but I don't want to make you go into personal stuff online. I want you to actually stop because it's to protect your own anonymity or whatever you want to call it. You don't need to say this stuff.
people already know this about me. There's nothing to hide. I'm a survivor. I'm cool with that. So, with that being said, I'm answering your question. No, I did not bleed.
Mm.
So with that in mind, it's very possible that a lot of women were stoned to death for that reason. Not only to mention, for some of us, our sensibilities, subjective as they may be, is that such things are evil in itself. To stone a woman because she lied about her virginity, is that really, does it really equal the punishment to kill somebody for that? I mean, I know what somebody would say, well, God's ways are higher than man's ways or whatever, but you've also demonstrated that that really depends on the context, depends on the so really the point that we're making here is that there's a lot of questionable things about the Bible that and a reason why people question these things, that they're just very, they just pose more questions than answers in a lot of cases. And I think that for, what we want to do, what I'd like to do is, I kind of know that despite the evidence to the contrary, or these questions, or seeming contradictions, or contradictions straight out, it really doesn't matter, because I think that people believe certain things because of the way that they make them feel. They get a lot of feels about certain things. They get their morality from peer pressure, the way they were raised, their culture, things of this nature. That'll never end. That's just part of humanity. That's part of our human nature. That's fine. But what we
Well, you
kind of
need to
aim to
understand.
do, well, hold on. I just want to make the point that what we're really trying to say here on this channel is,
Mhm.
despite all of that, you can believe anything you want to believe. Even if you were to admit all of that is true, Scott, all of those contradictions, all of those questions remain for me too. But you know what? I still believe anyways, because I just have faith that I'm probably wrong and God is right. I have faith in that, that despite how clear it may seem to me, I'm still probably wrong and God is probably right. So I'm going to use my faith to believe this stuff regardless, right? And you can do that. But what we kind of aim to do on this show is, despite all of that, that we can have these sort of open discussions and we can kind of bring some unity and understanding among each other, that we can have these difficult conversations without being,
Hmm.
condescending, or, you know, I, I always invite people to the show that disagree with us at least on one thing. And I always say this on every show, like, if you disagree with us on anything, that's great. That's what we want. We want to have, that's why we call it the discussion. We're not here to really just bash you or own you or do whatever.
Scott,
We just
Scott,
want to be open. Go ahead.
okay, so Scott, I think one thing that could be said here, and I didn't want to go here, but I will. People are built differently. So for somebody like, let's say, this is going to seem cruel, but for somebody who's built like Sophia, right? Because
Hmm.
Sophia is built a certain way. Um, People who do things that happen to her, maybe they have a pinky. We'll just say it that way, okay? Or maybe Sophia is built in a certain way to have no reaction to certain people who are a little bit bigger than a pinky. Who knows? But the point there
What does that
is,
mean? I'm confused. Can you translate that? Because I'm from
no, I don't want to
Germany and
translate that,
I don't know
Sophia.
every English
Okay.
expression.
It has to do with anatomy of parts, right? You understand? You understand what a pinky is, right?
A small
Also, do you
finger,
think
And
that
the size.
that because the size mattered and
okay,
that's
okay,
why
yeah,
it
yeah. Hold
didn't?
on now. Let me get to my point, though. Let me get to my point. You understand what I'm saying now. So, what we need to think about is the people back then were basically encouraged to stay within their own tribes. So it's likely that they have kind of similar parts, if you see what I'm saying. So now society today is so mixed up that a woman is built one way, a man can be built another way, and therefore 30% of the women might, in fact, say that they did not bleed the first time. You see, that could be a possible case. I'm just stating something that could be a fact, but I'm saying that you need to keep in mind the people in the Old Testament were again encouraged to stay within their tribes so the anatomies would fit, and therefore that might make sense as to why they were saying such things. So that is just an explanation. You don't have to accept
Okay,
it.
that's a post hoc
Right, but what I
rationalization,
would
but
just say about
It's a
that is
post
the
rational.
point still.
Oh, hold on, wait a second. It's a post rationalization. Come on, man. You give no credit to anyone's
Let me.
answers because you're
Can
using
I
smart
just
words.
please say something?
yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead, Sophia.
because
All I'm trying to say is that's very possible. There's probably many different reasons why that can happen, because the hymen can also grow back, which is something I didn't know. And then when I, had uh, consensual sex as an adult, my hymen was broken and I did bleed, but not the first time. So it could have been for many different reasons. But the point is, a woman does not always bleed on her first time. That's the only point, whatever the reason may be. So
well, what I
we're
was
just
gonna
saying,
say,
is that
is that even among your own tribe, someone can be built different and cause a woman not to bleed or cause a woman to bleed. There's no way to really say that that's the case without some sort of post hoc rationalization to say, you know what? All Israeli people, all Hebrews back then, were built the same. Every time, every single time a Hebrew man entered a Hebrew woman, she bled as a virgin. That is not, there is no way to really rationalize that as true.
No, you can rationalize it, you just can't prove it. So, and that's it is what it is, man.
I don't know. I think there we have scientific evidence that there's many reasons, even outside of that, even outside of size, that a woman wouldn't bleed. So I don't see
it
I'm
what you're
just
depends
getting
I'm
at.
on
just
many
saying
different.
what I'm saying. I'm giving you a rationalization that is logical, and you're saying, "Oh, that's not possible."
Well, it
So
seems like you're just trying
that's
to
not
come up
sense
with
for
any
you.
weird way to justify stoning a woman for
How
not
is
bleeding on her first.
How?
sexual encounter.
Hold on. You would have
That
to tell
kind of
me. You would
troubling
have
to
to
a
tell
lot
me
of
how
people.
that is weird.
I
I
mean,
know
okay,
that a lot of people
okay,
just
aside
aren't
from
going
that, aside from all of that, let's just say she did do it. That justifies murdering someone. Simple as that. Does it? You're going to say yes because God said so. And we're saying that's
to.
ridiculous. That's what all this comes down to. Because at the end of the day, anybody can say, God told me to, or according to God's laws. People can say, oh, well, that's what happened in the Old Testament. And so if I commit this kind of crime, it's because that's what God did himself. And that was allowed, during the Old Testament. And it's in the Bible. So if I do it now, I can do it. But that's not the reality of it, right? You yourself, you're a realist. You say things like, well, that's just how it is. That's just how the cookie crumbles. Okay, so now we're living in a society where you can't do those kind of things. So is that against God? You're going to jail. You're going to possibly face the death penalty yourself if you do some shit like that. Excuse my language. So, are we getting away from the Bible now? Are we outside of God's law now? Because we no longer allow that? Or what if women just become stronger and start kicking your ass? What you going to do then? Are they outside of God's law? Because I can tell you right now, I'm that type of kid. I will kick your ass if you try to rape me or kill me. And then you may be the one to drop. So what? Is that outside of God's law?
Well, so
Rant
I mean,
over.
I hear, so I hear what you're saying. However, again, Jesus knew the law completely, and the law was given to actually, again, basically have people realize that they can't do things themselves. So, in essence, when Jesus comes before the lady who was she was told she's an adulterer and they wanted to stone her, Jesus says, "Well, hey, have any of you law?" And then they all left, and he goes, "Okay, we're all alone. Did anyone try to stone you? No. Okay, then go forth and don't sin anymore. You know that what you did is not right. So just don't do it anymore." So there's the law of Moses and these laws that you're talking about. And then there's the law of Christ, which just says, look, believe in me. I will wear the sins that you have committed. I'll wear them and I'll take them to the cross and die for you. And I will be resurrected. And if you
Okay.
believe in me, then you're going to be okay. You go forth into, let's say, the heavenly court and you're accused, you won't be looked at. It's basically like you'll have Jesus as your attorney, and he'll be like, "No, you don't even know what you're talking about. What have you done? You're accusing. What have you done?" So, and she
Okay,
believed
so
in me.
Jesus
So,
is really cool for that. He's a very generous guy for that. So Jesus basically is going against what the old laws were, right?
no, he's fulfilling the old laws because no one could keep the laws except for him. That's why he is the one who understands exactly what the law is. So when they accuse him of his followers of eating grain on a Sabbath, he says, "Don't you know about the verse that says even David ate in the tabernacle or something, ate on the Sabbath?"
So
So you
were
don't
they?
even know that
So
law.
were
Okay,
they?
but you're accusing people.
So were they practicing the law incorrectly when they were doing things like
No,
that?
no, they weren't. Jesus makes that clear. But that's the problem
Yeah,
is
but
humans don't know the
I'm
law
confused
to the
about that.
exact.
I'm confused about that. Like, hold on, we got to take it step by step here. So at some point, a woman could get murdered for that, but then Jesus came and said, "Well, who is without sin, throw the first stone." So you're a sinner. You have sinned in some kind of way. So who are you to stone this woman to death? So basically, he advocated for the woman and saved her life. So that to me sounds clearly like there's some kind of change in law here because he didn't let it
Yeah,
go down like that. And
yeah.
that's why I'm saying, is that the same, can we say he didn't actually fulfill the law? He told them, y'all doing it incorrectly, and this is how you do it properly. Because I mean, thank God for the Jesus guy right here, because that lady would have just got stoned to death again.
well, here's the other
Yeah.
thing
So
is that,
what was your
Jesus
question coming
says
out of that?
Jesus said that he
I'm sorry.
fulfilled the law. He didn't abolish the law.
There,
Jesus didn't abolish the law.
I was confused on what your question might have been coming out of that.
No, my question is, did he actually basically say you were practicing the law incorrectly and this is how you do it correctly? And you said no, but I'm like
No,
that whole.
no. Okay, valid question. No, he wasn't saying that they were about to do the law incorrectly. What he was saying is that these people were accusing her and were about to do something, and they didn't realize that the Messiah was standing right in front of their face, and he was saying, "You guys deserve to be destroyed too. I know what you've done. I'm gonna wear her sin. Do you guys want to still stone her? I know what you've done." And they were like, "Uh-oh," and they ran away. So Jesus
Also,
wore
because
that
they
lady's
were
sin.
sinners themselves. Is that what you're saying?
They were sinners themselves. They didn't deserve to stone the lady. And Jesus knew that. And
Right.
Jesus said, I have her sin. I'll take it.
So
I
was
will take
she
it and I
just
will make it
innocent
clean.
and they? So was she just innocent, or did she commit the crime?
It sounded to me like she committed the crime, but ultimately they just ran away because they knew they were guilty too. It's the guilty calling the guilty guilty.
Okay, so then who can practice the law? Because we're all sinners according to the Bible. Yet you also say
So
that when they practiced the law that way, it was ordained by God and it was okay.
according to his interpretation of the Bible.
No, I'm just saying, like
that's correct.
that's where it gets.
So I'm sorry, Scott distracted me there. What was your question?
I was saying, since we're all sinners, and you think that because they were sinners, Jesus stepped in, they didn't have a right to do that to her because they were sinners themselves, right? But the Bible says we're all
Exactly.
sinners. So, with that being said, who
Hmm.
does get to practice the law? And so that's why I said before that, right? Before Jesus, that's what people did. And you saying it's justified because it was righteous in the eyesight of God. And so they didn't commit a crime by practicing law in that way and murdering women who supposedly did this, that, or the third. So that's what I'm saying though, like how does that even make sense if we're all sinners and for that reason he stopped them from stoning the woman, then who can practice the law? you know?
Okay, so you have what's known as the Aaronic priesthood and the Melchizedekian priesthood, and basically the difference in the letters will tell you this. It says where there is a change in the priesthood, which Jesus becomes the high priest, which is over the Aaronic priesthood. It's the more superior priesthood. Where there's a change in the priesthood, there is a necessity for a change in the law. So there's the law of Moses, which is the Aaronic priesthood, and then there's the law of Christ, which is under the Melchizedekian priesthood. So, in other words, those who try to be under the Aaronic priesthood would encounter tons of problems because they can't really keep the law. However, the law of Christ is different in that if you just believe on him and try to do the commands that he says, you're excused. So that's the difference. There's two different priesthoods, and one is superior to the other. So then there is a change in the law. Although Jesus will still refer back and say, don't do this, don't do this, but he's basically crunching it down into two basic commands: love others as you would love yourself, and love God with all your heart.
Okay, so then there was a change of law when he came around.
Well, actually, they admit that those two things did encompass the entire law. So it just simplifies it down to, well, am I treating somebody like a dirtbag? I shouldn't do that because I wouldn't treat myself like a dirtbag. So nobody would be looking for anyone else's wife. All the other things we've talked about, nobody would be doing that because they wouldn't want to do that to themselves. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
Well, again,
sort
that's
of, but
theology. That's we're getting into theology because
look,
obviously
hey
Orthodox
guys,
Jews.
let me interrupt for a second because I have to sign off. As much fun as it was nice meeting you, Dub. Hope you come by again, but I gotta run.
Yeah. All
See
right,
ya.
Sophia, we'll see you. We'll see you later.
Bye bye.
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of folks, they especially like Orthodox Jews, they see that the laws and the sacrifices will continue until, the Messiah returns and brings the new world, into fruition. Um, as far as Jesus, how he interprets that, he says he came to not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. But that not
Hmm.
one, thing would change. That those who would practice the law would be considered greatest in heaven, and those who didn't would be considered least in heaven. Now you would go to heaven, but he's definitely saying that practicing the law was part of pleasing God. Like Second Samuel, I think 22:21 through 25, and I'll read it. Says, "The Lord dealt with me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands. He rewarded me, for I have kept the ways of the Lord and have not wickedly departed from my God. For all his rules were before me, and from his statutes I did not turn aside. I was blameless before him, and I kept myself from guilt. And the Lord has rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to my cleanness in his sight." And David was considered actually following the law pretty perfectly, except for Uriah the Hittite. Like First Kings, it says in 15:15, for David had done what was right in the eyes of the Lord and had not failed to keep any of the Lord's commands all the days of his life. So keeping the law, it's debatable whether no one can keep the law. The law was there for a reason, was is what a Jewish Orthodox person may say. And of course, Christian theology may say, well, it was sort of
So
like to
your
show
but
you
your
that
example,
no. Go ahead.
your example that you just gave was about David, and he didn't fully keep the law.
True. That's what I said. Except in the case of Uriah
Okay.
the Hittite. So he
So
didn't,
then
but
who? So then who is there an example from the Bible other than Jesus as somebody who's able
uh,
to keep the law perfectly?
think Noah, Abraham. This was before the
Abraham
Mosaic
spoke
law,
the
but
law. So was Noah.
yeah,
Abraham,
that was
both of
before.
those people were before the law.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. But the point is that a lot of not it's not what I'm saying. I'm not engaging in the theological debate, but I'm saying a lot of Orthodox Jews would point to these things and say that the law was here for a reason and it's worth striving for. Job is another example, like Brooklyn Lou said, kept God's laws of the time perfectly, right? And Jesus then came to
Job
abolish
didn't.
the law
I
at all.
mean, the problem is that you're going to encounter with Job. And again, I'm not trying to attack Job or Abraham or anyone, but um, but Job had to. He said he had to repent. So that means
Yeah, well, that was part of the that was part of it. You could be forgiven of sins through sacrifices, and even in the law, that was the that's what was provided. That was a provision, was the animal sacrifices that would cover the sins.
right, and that was basically taken unto Jesus, who provides the sacrifice that is the ultimate sacrifice.
Right. But like I said,
Okay.
there's a lot of folks that even among, I think, like Messianic Jews or different interpretations, that would disagree. So the whole point of the show here in this conversation is to just
Hmm.
raise that question to kind of understand where everybody's coming from. Like I,
Hmm.
I understand fully well what you mean. The law was kind of like a foreshadowing, and that was kind of like a school teacher, as Paul mentioned. I think it was
It
like
seems
kind
like
of a
you know a lot
tutor.
about the Bible. So why are you not like? You don't seem like you're a believer in it, though.
No, not anymore. Not at all.
Why
For
not?
me, the reason I don't, because I don't see enough sufficient evidence to support a real good reason. The epistemology isn't there. There's no sound epistemology for me to take the Bible as a guide to my life. Like I can see the value in it. It's got a lot of poetic value, historical value in some ways, even cultural values. But as far as a source of truth, like ontological truth, I don't see that it
Hmm.
actually provides any of that. I have no reason to think it
On, on,
does.
okay, so ontological. Please, I don't want to go look the word up. So,
Okay, ontological, kind of like the fundamental. Like in theism, God is the fundamental, unchanging, immutable property from which creation emerges from. God's the creator, the first cause, the first mover. So that's ontology. It's the what is. It's the study of what is. So I don't see that
hmm
God is necessarily something that can be proven. I'm not saying that it's been disproven in any kind of way, but I don't think that, especially the God of, say, some of the world religions are necessary. They all have their problems, to where I couldn't justify saying that either one was the absolute truth. I couldn't go that far to say that.
right. So, if
Um,
you were to pin it down, what would it be? Exactly, what would it be? Where was the problem for you?
uh, the problem with God, well, it raises a lot of questions. Like for me, it'd be the problem of evil. For one thing, like if we define God as all loving, all powerful, and all knowing, if that's the
Hmm.
God that supposedly the true ontological primitive of creation, if you will, then that has a lot of problems. There's a lot of tensions because again, we see evil, we see unnecessary suffering in the world, and
Hmm.
so a God who would allow those things to happen just raises a lot of questions. It creates a lot of uncertainty. It would take a lot of faith to actually believe that, despite it all, that's what the truth really is. I couldn't say that that was the truth.
Well, okay, so you wouldn't say that it would be fair to have a heaven and an earth, and then try to sift out people's personalities among this first heaven and first earth and the other spot that certain people are going to go. But to have a new heaven and a new earth based on these certain parameters, so we know something else is going to happen. You
Not
don't
sure
say
what
that that's
you're
fair.
not
So
I'm not sure
what I'm
what you
trying
mean.
to what I'm trying to say is there's a heaven and there's an earth and there's a new heaven and there's a new earth, and people are being sifted based on what their belief systems are, so that all of the people who are not making correct decisions at all will be all put together in the same spot. And then there's going to be an earth, a new earth, where people are
But
going to be put together there. And then
how
there's
do
a
you
new
prove that?
heaven.
How can I test for that?
It's a concept in the Bible. You've read it, so
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, I don't believe the Bible anymore, so I
that
can't
makes
really
does
go
it,
by that.
oh, hold on. But I'm saying logically, for somebody who has read the Bible, logically, does that make sense?
Well, like I said, I understand what a lot of the Bible says, but like I
But
said,
that's kind
I
of a yes
don't.
or no. But that's kind of a yes or
No,
no.
I don't base my
Wouldn't it
life
seem
around the
fair
Bible
to
anymore, though. First
right?
you
I
have to, when you're
understand that,
putting the
but I'm
cart
just
before the
saying
horse.
logically.
Why should I take the Bible as true? Let's attack that
I
first.
didn't. I didn't put the cart before the horse. What I'm doing here is saying, let's say that the book is the Cat in the Hat, and I'm saying you read the book, right?
Hmm.
Okay, so does it make sense logically that things would be created as there was a heaven, and then there's an earth, and then there's a new heaven and a new earth and a new place that people don't want to go? Um, does it make sense logically that that would be fair to sift people out and put them in whatever box they're supposed to go, so that I don't have to deal with people like Jeffrey Epstein, and I don't have to deal with people who are going to try to cheat me, and I don't have to deal with me slavery. I don't have to deal with all these issues. Like, does that make sense? Is it logical? That's what I'm saying.
Within the book, like if I was to say the Bible's true and I understand what you're saying, does that make sense? Yeah, sure.
Hmm.
But
So then
But so what?
ontologically, why wouldn't that make sense?
Because again, ontologically, we're stepping outside of the Bible. We're stepping into reasons to believe that, the Bible starts off with God created. That's the first couple words of the Bible, right? So how do we justify those first three words, God created, or those first two words?
In the beginning.
Yeah, in the beginning, God created. Those are four words. How do
Mhm.
we make sense of any of those words? In the beginning, what do we mean by beginning? Let's start there. What does beginning mean?
Let's say the beginning of consciousness for his creation.
Okay, what creation? You're talking about the heavens and the earth, right? What is the heavens?
What do you mean? What is the heavens?
Yeah, like we're taking the Bible. The Bible says,
Hmm.
"In the beginning."
Hmm.
In the beginning. So beginning, you're saying is the time zero, T0. This happened. What was before that T0? God, right?
Nothingness for his creation because it wasn't made yet.
Okay. So why
It
should
was
I believe
void.
that? Why? So
It's
how do
just
we
like
know
the
that?
earth is. How do we know what?
How do we know that there was a beginning?
So again, it's this is all playing down to faith. I already told you before the word that specifically says that somebody has faith in there is no God, somebody has faith in there is God, and neither one of them can actually be proven wrong because faith
Okay.
itself is a postulate. So
All right.
it's a
So if a person has faith that the white people are the most superior race on the earth, does that make it true?
no, it doesn't.
Right. So why should we appeal to faith? If you can come to a wrong conclusion based on faith, then why should we use faith to believe anything? How you doing, Lou, by the way?
How you doing, Scott?
All right. We'll let you have a conversation. I just had a few questions I want to get out. So you said faith is what you're basically basing the assumption that there was a beginning. Why should I use faith as a reliable method to come to that conclusion?
Faith is the expectations are unseen. There's no way for me to actually prove to you what my faith is. You're either going to accept it or not. I mean, I can't prove anything to you. That's why again, it's called a postulate, man.
So I can't prove to you that white people are more superior to black people. So does that mean you should believe it?
Uh, I'm sorry. Maybe the other guy can answer you because I am not understanding what your question is.
So the the point is that when you use faith, faith can lead you to things you don't believe. Faith can lead you to things that are untrue, things that are not true. Like a Muslim can say, you just have to have faith to believe that Islam is the truth. And then you would disagree
Hmm.
with him. But you're both using the same method to come to your particular beliefs. So, how can I
Yeah,
think as an outsider that faith is a reliable method to come to some kind of truth? That's what I'm asking.
because you also have a faith. You say there is no God. Let's say, for example, that's your
I
faith,
didn't say
whether
that.
you want to
I
admit
did.
it or not. Okay,
No, I
I
didn't
don't.
say that.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't really
No, it
matter
does
because
matter.
all I'm saying.
Words matter. Words matter.
Okay,
So if I say that God is not true, God does not exist, that would be a faith claim. I agree with you 100%. That's why I don't say such
okay.
things. But go ahead, Blue. Do you have any any perspectives on faith?
Hey, Doug. Nice seeing you, by the way.
Right on,
Faith,
buddy.
faith is never a good way to discern what is true. Simply is not a good method.
Okay, so do you have faith in science scientists?
No, the only faith I have in
Hmm.
science is that the methodology is pretty good. A
Hmm.
scientist can be wrong, right? But science changes when it finds out something is wrong. Then the science changes. So no, I don't have faith in science. No, that would be that
Okay.
would be a foolish thing for me to do.
Mm.
Right.
Okay, so then that crosses science off as a whole.
No, no, it
So
doesn't. It doesn't cross it off. It means that, see, when you have faith, something can be true that you have faith in, or something can be false that you have faith in, which is what Scott was getting at. I mean, if you talk to a Muslim, they have faith that their belief is true. Right?
okay.
That doesn't make it true. All right. It may be true or may not be true. And that's where we go to other methodology. We don't just say, well, I have faith that the sky is pink. And that's what I say, because that's just being stubborn and thick headed. All right. What we do is we examine and we determine if something is true that a person has faith in. Does
Hmm.
that make sense?
Sure, it makes sense. Um, I'm not sure where to go with this because basically I would ask you, what do you have faith in then? What is it that you personally have faith in?
I don't live my life based on faith, so I guess I'd have to think about every single thing I believe and why I believe it.
Yeah,
And
it's a deep question.
I have to think of, does it, is it logical? Is it rational? Is it based on evidence? Those are the things I would have to think about. It'd have to be a specific thing for me to answer clearly. But as a
Hmm.
general rule, I do not base my life on faith at all. None.
So when a doctor tells you this vaccine, um, we're gonna go ahead and say everyone has to take it. Now, do you have faith that they're telling you the truth?
I don't. I either it's backed by some evidence that I may be able to analyze critically, or it's not. I don't just go to a doctor and the doctor says, "Well, I decided I'm going to do this," and and I just go, "Oh, well, I have faith in you." I
Okay.
don't do that.
So then, if somebody told you that there's rocks that are coming into our universe that are from some other universe and they're moving weird, so they must be aliens, do you have faith in what that person's telling you?
No, I
Don't.
keep telling you, I don't use faith as a methodology to determine what is true. That's the point I'm
Okay.
making.
Okay, so here's the issue that I'm trying to get at, which is it's quite funny. But basically, when you go anywhere and you don't have any knowledge about these things, you have to place faith in the person who is that's their specific professional job. Unless you wanted to look up absolutely everything, you would have to place a certain amount of faith in those people to be telling you the truth, right?
Well,
Does that
I
make
mean,
sense?
there's degrees of,
Trust.
let's say, yeah, there's degrees of a trust that I may have in a particular person, because maybe that particular person has
Has a track record.
demonstrated over the years that they're very accurate and I probably can trust what they're saying. But faith, again, faith is believing something without evidence. And I don't have that. I don't run my life on that.
That's not actually something that I would agree on as a definition, because there is evidence that I can give you, but I have faith that the evidence is true, and you have no faith, so you're saying my evidence is not true. So there's that argument as well. But my point
Well,
is, you do have to have faith in people who are professionals. So if you take your car to the automotive shop, you're going to have a trust of faith in that person that they're not going to mistreat your car. They're going to charge you what needs to be charged, so on and so forth. The fact of the matter is, people lie. So that guy who you brought your car into to fix your brakes, all of a sudden now you got an air conditioning problem, or you got something else, because they lie, they cheat, they steal, all of these things. So
Right.
it's an idea. The idea of the whole thing is, who can you put your faith in? And so there's a story from the Bible. It's in Genesis 24, I believe, 17, where people are told that if they are circumcised, they will be treated just like their people. Well, they got circumcised. They all did it, the whole tribe. And this was because the person who was the head of that tribe raped somebody who was an Israelite. Now, they said, get circumcised and trust us, you'll be treated like us. They all got circumcised. In the meantime, while they're recovering from this, they all got killed. So, and the Bible's, the point there is that the Bible invites strangers. But with that story right there, you can see that certain people are dishonest with when they say, you'll be treated like us, well, forget about it. Jesus says that if you come to him, and he is an Israelite from the tribe of Judah, from Bethlehem, if you come to me, I will know everyone who comes to me, none will be turned away. And that is exactly what the law is trying to say. He's the only one that can convey that law in a manner that actually jives with the rest of Scripture. So if you can understand that.
Let me ask you something. Okay. Um, let's say you have a very close friend of yours, or maybe a spouse, or maybe someone that you've built up a trust in, right? Could imagine such a
Mm-hmm.
person.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say they came to you and they told you that they were just up the road and they saw a flying man on a pink elephant going into the sky. So they saw a man flying on an elephant going into the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have faith that that is actually accurate, or would you question that?
So if they were on their own and they were the only one that was saying, then obviously I would think that person probably needs to go talk with somebody that's above my pay grade.
Okay,
However,
so
uh,
but so we agree and understand you otherwise would have trust in this person because you know the person well and they haven't told you lies before, so you would generally have trust in that person. Is that correct?
that's fine to say.
Okay, so now when they come to you and they tell you they saw the flying pink elephant with the man riding on it fly into the sky, your trust in what they said is diminished, right? In that particular case.
Not necessarily. I would probably say, did you stop by a foreign bar and maybe somebody slipped something into your drink?
Okay, I gotcha, but it's still you're going to question, even though you know this person very well. You're still going to say, "Come on, man." Right? Right? And that's the difference between faith and evidence. See, faith has to be tested in order to see if it's true or not. That's it. Faith must be tested. Just saying I have faith in it is a non. It means nothing. Okay,
Okay,
because
so
millions of people have faith in all different things. You get that, right?
okay, okay. So what you're saying is ringing true to me, because Abraham was said to have faith, and then later on his faith was tested in the form of God saying, "Okay, let's go up the hill right here, and you're going to sacrifice your son." Ultimately, God did not make that happen. He replaced the son with, I believe it was a goat
A
or
ram,
something like that.
a
How
ram in
a
the
Yes.
ram,
bush,
okay.
a ram in the
And
bush.
and so and so in that portion, I agree with you there. And I lost my train of thought. But in other words, this is why the title of this show is appropriate, because if you don't think on the way to that hill, Abraham wasn't suffering, then I think you got another thing coming, and you need to understand Abraham was probably the entire time, wondering why he would have to do something like this. He was probably shedding more than a few tears, you know. But he goes, okay, well, this is what God is asking of me, so
Mhm.
I guess I have to do this. And people
Good.
probably think if somebody said something like that today, you'd say they're crazy, you know.
Well, it's a good point, but let's examine Abraham and Isaac. Okay. God made it that he wanted to see what Abraham would do. Would he obey him or not? Right. And
Correct.
that is the story, correct?
That's right.
Okay. And the story is that how he tested Abraham was to ask him to unalive his own son. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So God wanted Abraham to be willing to unalive his own son as a test of loyalty. Is that correct?
I would say that's correct.
Okay, now why would a person ever ask somebody to do such a thing? I mean, if I came to you and you were my best bud, my best friend in the world, and I said, well, I want to see if you're loyal. Can you go unalive your girlfriend? And then if you do that, I would say, oh yeah,
Yeah.
you're very loyal, and I'm gonna
All right.
reward
Okay.
you. All right. That
Okay. Okay.
story,
Okay.
that story of Abraham and Isaac is literally insane.
Hmm.
It does seem like it is. I
Well,
agree
it,
with
it
you, right?
doesn't seem like it is.
It
It
is.
is.
We have to be rational.
Yes, we got to use our brains. All right.
Ah, no, we
Not
are
we
using
don't
our
use
brain.
faith, right?
Now,
We don't
what I will
use
say is,
that because
what I
faith
will
can
say,
be wrong.
hold on, wait a second. I will say you at least understand the magnitude of what was going on, obviously, because you're saying that doesn't seem rational to me at all. And with that, I can agree. To me, it doesn't make much sense either. However, in the end, he ends up sacrificing a ram, and that becomes a foreshadowing of God sacrificing His own Son. So
Yes.
it's what the moral of the story is. I guess it's post hoc or whatever it is it's showing what was going to happen, and that God basically would not require just a normal human to do what he was asking. He's asking that of his own son, who is God, and therefore that sacrifice is acceptable.
Well,
So,
here's another
I mean,
dimension to that story. Another dimension to that story is, did Abraham believe in God to begin with? Of course he did. He already knew God existed, according to the story, right?
yeah, it
So there
says he
was
had
no,
faith, and his faith
yeah, but
saved
he didn't
him.
have,
So,
well,
No, he didn't
no,
have
he
faith.
didn't have
The
faith. He
story
knew.
says he knew
He
him.
had a
He didn't have
relationship.
faith.
the story actually does say he had faith, and faith is what saved him. But go ahead. It was counted to him as righteousness. That's what it says.
Yeah, but that situation, but as far as his relationship with God,
Yes.
was it based on faith or did he really talk to God?
It's based on faith. His faith was accounted to him as righteousness.
So
That is
how
the
do you know,
relationship.
if it was just faith, how do we know that Abraham actually talked to God and it wasn't his imagination?
Because he had faith in God, that he was talking to God.
I have faith that I talked to my God, which is a pink unicorn that farted the universe into existence. How do you know that's true? Because I have faith in it?
No, I would say that there's no truth to that because I don't believe the same things you do.
Exactly, exactly. So the beliefs are different based on different faiths. So
Yes.
faith is not a reliable method to come to the truth, you know? Like I don't have to have
No,
faith that my children exist. I don't have to have faith that Brooklyn Lou
incorrect.
is on my
It's in,
channel right now. I don't have to have
it's
faith in that. All I
It's
have to
incorrect.
do is
There's a fallacy in what you're saying, my friend.
I know what you're getting at. We can all be saying we live in the matrix, or I'm just a brain in the vat, and they're pumping these thoughts into my head. I understand that, but I'm still having that experience. I still have that experience that Lou exists, that I'm talking to you, and that I'm having my conscious experience, right? But I don't have faith in that. I don't have faith in the same way that I would have faith that a pink unicorn farted the universe into existence, because I'm not experiencing that. I have no experience of that. So at least we have that. So it's
Right, you
steps.
have no
There's
evidence
steps.
that a pink unicorn farted at all. You have no evidence whatsoever.
Correct. Absolutely. I agree with
Uh-huh.
you
Correct.
100%. And I have no faith
So
that
the
your
Bible is
or
evidence, though.
evidence that your
The
God
Bible.
exists either.
So wait a
Mm.
second. The Bible is evidence. You're just dismissing it as evidence.
Mm-mm.
Well, evidence,
No,
no, no, no.
we didn't
Claims are
even
not
get to
evidence.
evidence yet.
Yeah, we haven't got
We're
to it.
talking
Remember, the
about
Bible,
faith,
it
and is
starts off with,
faith a reliable way? That's what
Right,
we're
and
talking
so
about. We didn't
yeah,
get to
he
evidence.
says, no. I didn't. Hey, listen, Brooklyn, Lou. He just said that he has faith that a pink unicorn farted in that created the universe. Now,
Yes.
where is that written down anywhere?
Doesn't matter if it's written down or not. He has that faith.
or I can, let's say it was written down. Would
Yeah.
that
Okay,
make
What
it
if it
true?
was written
all
down?
right.
What if it was written down?
Oh, so if you just wrote it on a piece of paper right now, I'd be like,
Yeah, the
yeah, well, I
napkin
already
God.
know the things that have
Right,
happened before, and I know you.
right. You're making the
So
napkin God fallacy. The napkin God fallacy says that as long as it's written down somewhere, it's evidence that you can believe it. It's valid evidence. That's not necessarily true.
Yeah,
okay.
Dub, I have a drink. You're looking at it. All right. Does it take much faith to believe that the drink that I have in my hand, this can, is real? Do you really need faith to go there?
Actually, you might not have a drink at all. Maybe it's gone, or maybe that could be liquid death. Literally, I don't know. What is
I'm
it?
talking about the can. I am
Uh
drinking
huh.
liquid, but it wouldn't take you that much faith to accept that there's enough here that you could reliably believe that there is a can there. Faith is not that. Faith is
Yeah,
asking
no.
you to believe something without evidence. That's what
So
faith
no,
is.
that's not what faith is. Again, I can get the verse if you'd like. Faith is the belief in evidence
It's
in
the
something
hope.
that is actually unseen. I'll get the
Pull
verse. I
pull
need
the
to read it correct.
verse. Pull the
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
verse.
Hebrews 11:1.
Let's look at it.
Hebrews 11:1. Is that what it is? Hebrews 11:1.
Yeah, I believe so.
Read it.
Okay. Let's
Here, I'll pull it up.
11:1. Okay. It
I'll
says
put it
now
on the
faith is
screen.
the assurance. It says now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen.
Right, right.
Okay. Stop right there and digest that.
Right. And so
Okay. You're
what you're
not,
not
I
seeing.
say to
Hold
you,
on. Hold on. So
it's
hold
not
on a second.
this. You're looking
Hold
at
on a
this.
second. I need to make an addition. I need to make an addition to this because there's something you're not seeing. Okay. On the bottom of the page, it says subsection C, evidence. So it says, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So, in other
Yes.
words, have I seen? Have I yes. Do I have hope in him? Yes. So, I have hope, evidence, because I read about it, and seen him? No.
Evidence here is like the assurance about what we
Yes.
do not see.
It's literally saying there that you are to take the faith as evidence.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Faith
that's
is the
ass
evidence.
backwards, my friend. The
Yeah,
Bible's
faith is not the
wrong.
evidence. Right. I always said that about that verse. That was one of
The
the things
Bible
that
is
troubled me.
wrong. That's not how that works. All right. The Bible has it upside down. Okay.
I don't think so.
It,
I think you're
well,
totally misreading the verse, but that's all right.
it literally says that you are to take the faith, the belief, as the evidence. In what other scientific discipline or academia or any other field of study do we do that?
None.
None.
The assurance is the assurance is the evidence. Okay, faith is the hope. So, do you see those connections?
Faith is the evidence. Read it again.
No, no, no. Faith is not the evidence. Assurance is the evidence. So, if I say I have evidence, I read the Bible. That is the assurance. It's the evidence, and the faith is the hope.
Read the verse again and the commentary, because I didn't hear that. I heard that the faith is the evidence.
Of things hoped for.
No, it
And
says
if
faith.
that's evidence, that is ass backwards. The Bible is wrong.
It says faith is
Faith is
confidence, or
evidence.
faith is.
Faith is the evidence. Yes, in that what you're reading, okay, is true. So what you're reading is the evidence.
Doesn't
Okay,
say that.
and then the
You're
faith
adding to the
is
text.
hoping. The faith is hoping that the evidence that you have is true. That's what faith is, literally.
You just did
You,
bad Bible study. You added to the text. You literally
no, I
added to
didn't.
the text. The text
It's
does not
simple
say
grammar.
that. The text
Simple
doesn't
grammar
say that.
diagramming, my friend. It does say that.
And also, the Bible says if you add to the text, you probably should be on your way to hell, because that's very sinful to add to the text.
It says not to subtract from the text. I believe that you're subtracting from it. You
It
believe
says
I'm adding.
add
That's
or
all.
subtract, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken.
Add and subtract.
Ah,
Yeah,
yeah.
add
Well,
or
you're
subtract.
subtracting.
I
You're
didn't subtract.
subtracting. I don't feel
I'm
like I'm
going
adding.
by what the Bible says. What it
Mhm.
says is
So am
wrong.
I.
Yeah, but
I'm reading it right here. It says, now faith
Read
is
it again,
confidence
Scott.
in what we hope for. Faith is confidence in what we hope for.
That's correct. Where do you get the confidence from? Because somebody taught you that. That's what the Bible also says. How would somebody know if they weren't taught? So that
Yeah,
is the
but you have.
confidence.
Yeah, but what are they teaching? They're teaching you a
Evidence.
hope. They're teaching you a hope, something to
There's
hope
no
in.
No,
evidence
they're
in the
giving
word
you.
faith.
They're not teaching. They're not teaching you hope. They're giving you the evidence.
That nobody
The
is
evidence is
giving
the
me
hope.
any evidence ever. Okay. You haven't offered one little bit of evidence. What you've offered is what you believe. That's not evidence.
I've showed you the evidence. You don't have the same hope that I do that it's true. That's the only difference.
Yeah, faith is believing things that are not demonstrated to be true. That's what it is.
No, that's not what faith is. So wow, it's insane. All right.
It
Whatever.
is. It's insane, but
It is.
it's totally real. Okay.
Yeah, faith is confidence in what we hope for. That's not. That doesn't mean anything.
There's no evidence in the word faith. None.
Faith is
It's just a claim.
confidence in what you have been told. That is faith. That is the
Yeah,
very
but
definition of faith.
okay. So why
And
should
that
we
is
have
What have
not
you been
confidence?
told?
evidence, is it?
So in other words, in other words, what have you been told? You might have been told there is no God. So you are having faith in what somebody told you as well. Or else wouldn't we just be sitting here with like a
I've been
blank
told
brain?
all kinds of things, and so have you. Okay. I've been told that
Right.
Jesus Christ died for my sins. I've been told
You were
that
just told that there's a pink unicorn that farted and the
exactly,
Right.
exactly.
So
I've
should we
been
have? So
told
is that
all
evidence?
kinds of things my
Right. Is
entire
that
life.
evidence? Is that
All right?
evidence?
That's not
That's not
evidence that
evidence.
somebody told me
No,
something.
that's That's the way to start a cult, though.
Yeah, but there's
And
no
that's
there's
what
no
religion
evidence for that.
is, my
Right.
friend.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. You
That's
just
what
kind
it
of
is.
mhm. Yeah, if
It,
being
it,
told
it
something
actually
is
isn't.
evidence,
So
then
look,
everything is
I mean,
evidence. There's evidence for everything.
Yeah.
okay,
Because whatever you have faith in, that's it. It's evidence.
Yeah, and this is the problem, Dub, is that that's not how reason works. Reason doesn't work that way. Just being told something doesn't make it true, and it's not evidence. Evidence is something that you can tie together, that you can correlate together. Evidence is correlation.
okay.
You have to
The problem that
correlate.
you have, the problem that you have with this again would be, for me, you're saying problem, Dub, is that you weren't there, so you can't prove any of this, and that's absolutely correct. But you also have a problem with anything that a scientist tells you because you don't know anything about science, and you're just going to take that person's word for it, and then you get a
Well,
shot, or maybe
this is
your
true. This is true,
grandma
Dub.
or
No
your
one's
cousin does, and then now
Brooklyn
they're
Lou.
dead. So,
Lou has just told you he agreed with you on that. He said he doesn't have faith in anything. He doesn't have faith in scientists that tell him anything. He's
all
saying
right.
that. He said
So,
the only way he now you can trust people, and if you want to define faith as a measure of trust, well, now we're playing a semantical game. But even in that case, though, your trust is based on evidence. Your trust is based on track record, experience. Some words from a Bible or that farting unicorns created the universe. There's no evidence
okay.
for that. That's a
Oh,
total
oh,
faith
oh,
claim.
but no, you're definitely wrong because prophecy itself happens. Prophecy, where somebody, however many years, this is going to would
I don't
lay
know about
some evidence
our.
down. That's a
Dub,
fact.
Dub, I'm going to go, but I want to leave you with just a couple
Aw.
things to think about.
Oh,
Okay.
thanks, Lou. Thank you. Talk about the pink unicorn and the farting of the universe. Yeah, talk about
Listen,
that. Maybe,
I'm going to
maybe
leave
you've
you with
been
a couple
convinced.
things just to think about, to contemplate. Okay.
Thank you.
You know that because someone has faith in something does
Uh-huh.
not mean it is true. I know you can grasp that, right?
No, that's absolutely. There's no pink unicorn that farted and made the universe.
Right,
I'll agree with
right,
Right.
you, Lou.
So
You
so
got
we
it.
are on the same page there,
right.
right?
Hmm.
So the idea that faith is enough to convince someone who is rational goes out the window. Faith is not enough. It's not enough. All right? Because if faith
Like I told you just now, Lou, like I just told you just now, if somebody says something like, in this day and age, it's a little bit different, but back in those days when they didn't have phones to know exactly where people were, I could tell you, hey, Lou, tomorrow there's going to be this guy named Mac. Mac's going to come up to you and he's going to give you a Big Mac from McDonald's with some fries and all this stuff. Guess what, Lou, today it's kind of over because at this point in time, I can say, oh, I really want Lou to join my cult. Let me look up this guy, Mac, because we're on the same team. I can say, hey, Lou's going to be over here at this point in time. Just carry around your McDonald's bag. I'll tell you exactly when to give it to him. Just say, hey, here's your Big Mac, Lou. And that's exactly, wow, that's crazy. What's going to happen. Now, prophecy has already happened. There's a different type of prophecy that's listed in Revelation, and it's called the spirit of prophecy. These are people who actually have the testimony of Jesus. So there is no more of this Old Testament kind of prophecy, but however, some can really fake it today, and they could make it seem really real. If you had a bunch of cult members following you around all day because you carry your phone around or whatever, they'd be able to trick you easily into thinking that they're right. And whatever they believe is what you should start following. So, hey, I got this dog. My dog's name's Sam. You want to take care of Sam and talk to Sam, and we're gonna follow you around all day, buddy, every day. And then you're gonna be like, oh shit, what is going on here? But
Okay. Let me address that and then I'm gonna go. All right.
go for it, Lou.
First off, biblical prophecy has to be demonstrated to have actually happened. Okay. So
It
you
does.
could go,
It
hold
okay,
on. We could go
got it.
prophecy by prophecy is the only way to accurately do that. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there is really no biblical prophecy of Jesus that ever was fulfilled in a way that would be what we would call being fulfilled. What we have
Mm-hmm.
is we have interpretations of different events that may or may not have happened. All right. It's not ironclad like you have been told. That's first thing.
Mm,
And to study that, it's going to take you some time. Okay.
mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to go into each prophecy, but I will tell
Uh-huh.
you that all the prophecies I've ever read and been told that it was prophecy actually were not fulfilled, but that's
Okay.
a long study. All
Yeah.
right. Now, aside from
Okay.
that, I heard you say you're Catholic. Is that correct?
Hold on, Lou. Before you go there, because I like to kind of take issues one by one. So, Zechariah 9:9, it says that the Messiah would come in a donkey, riding on a donkey, and this not did that happen
That
according to the
wasn't a
Bible?
that
I
wasn't
have
even a
no clue if
prophecy.
that happened or not. All right.
Okay.
That's a
It did.
very
So then there's another.
meaningless.
So then there's
It's a
hold on,
very.
hold on,
Let
hold
me
on. Yeah,
explain
yeah. I
something.
understand. I understand.
That's a
I
very
understand, Lou. I
meaningless
want to let you.
prophecy.
Lou, I want to no, that's not meaningless. That's the prophecy of the Messiah. So that's by far from meaningless. However, there's another prophecy in Zechariah 14, I believe it's 14:4, where it says his feet will touch down on the Mount of Olives. So that means there's a second coming, which means he would have resurrected from his first encounter on earth, and then he would come back. So at least there's one that got fulfilled so far that you can
No, no,
understand
he
would
only
be
fulfilled he
in the
only
Bible. But I
fulfilled
want to let
that.
you move on to your next point. I want to let you move on to your next point, though. Go ahead.
Okay, he only fulfilled that if you believe exactly what the New Testament says. All right. When you're a critical
Right.
thinker, you go past what people say and you go
Uh,
into what the evidence shows. That's the
that,
difference.
that that's what the evidence does show. How do
No,
you
it
have
doesn't.
evidence otherwise?
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. So okay.
No.
So if there is let's say the parting of the Red Sea, right? And so supposedly these people walked across, the water was parted, all this stuff, and then the Egyptians were the ones that were flooded out and drowned and all that stuff. So if they're riding over on chariots and you found information on the internet that basically says, "Oh, look, we found a part of a chariot here,"
That's
would
been
you not
debunked, by the
think
way.
that could
Yeah.
possibly be it's debunked
Yep.
Yes.
by who?
Totally debunked. It's not real. It's
By who?
That's been
mythology.
debunked.
All
I don't even know
right.
why you brought that up, man.
All right. It's
That's
mythology, and you take it by
It,
faith without
the
evidence.
reality the
Right.
reality is that things are being dug up every single day. So whether that
like
one was
what?
debunked or not wouldn't matter. I was just giving one example. So you need to say everything that has been dug up is debunked. I
Well,
mean, come
show
No,
me
on,
one
man.
that
I was
hasn't
giving
been. Show me
a
one.
particular
no.
example.
The Red Sea being parted, I said you'd have to go specific thing by specific thing. That's the only way to look at these things.
Yeah,
Unless
you're.
you're just going to go, I believe it.
Yeah, Professor Gator is a known. He spreads misinformation. He was the one that talked about that chariot discovery in the Gulf of Suez. And
It
then
doesn't
he
matter. It
created
was
like the
just one example,
satirical
brother.
website.
Whether
Ron Wyatt, the same way
whether
about the flood of Noah.
what
He talked about the ark. They found out that was debunked. That was not even wood. That was just sediment in the mountainside. That's been debunked. But you're going to
Uh-huh.
find that all of those things have been debunked. There's not really a lot that
No.
prophecies
But
that have
here's the
been
thing, Dub. None of that matters that it's debunked if you believe it.
right. Right. If you have faith,
Yes,
How is it? No, no,
as long as you determine what you believe by faith, it doesn't matter that it's been
guys,
debunked, does it?
it's
guys,
just the
it
devil,
was
right?
a specific example, and it doesn't matter whether or not there was that was an actual chariot or whatever. Things have been
Then why did you bring it
being
up?
dug
That's
up
the whole thing.
every.
We're looking for real evidence.
Hold
There
on,
is no
Scott. Yeah,
real
yeah, yeah, I
evidence.
know you want to. Hold on, you guys. You want to hammer it home and not let me speak because you got me. I got the gotcha on him. I got
Now,
it.
The
hold
gotcha
on.
No,
question.
Look,
guys, things are
I
being
said,
things are
hold
being
on.
dug
I'm
up.
going to
Things
go
are.
because I have
Hold,
other things to do.
Lou, hold
All
on,
right.
Lou. Just hold on for a second. Now, irregardless of if one thing has been debunked and the other one, there being things being dug up every single day. So you're not going to believe any of them, and they're all just
No, I
debunked.
believe what I determined to be true. That's what I believe.
I believe that Pontius
Oh,
Pilate,
so what you determined
there
to be true.
Yes, yes.
That's hard to argue with, though, Lou. That's hard to argue with, Lou, because
Why would you
a
argue with
coin was
me?
dug up.
Because
Hold
that's
on,
the
wait a
only
second.
rational
Lou,
way
Lou,
to
that's
you're
determine.
what you do,
interrupting me,
Dub.
Lou. Lou,
Yeah.
Lou, Lou, you're interrupting. Now, hold on. So, wait, if there was a coin dug up today, would you say, oh, that coin's not even real? They just made it and they threw it in the ground and dug it up and then they're like saying it's real. You could say that, right?
I would ask more questions and determine whether I
Uh-huh.
think that this was real or not.
Uh-huh. So what
That's
are you going
it.
to rely on? Are you going to rely on carbon dating because I've heard that has also been faked. So
Carbon
see, there's
dating
nowhere
does
you
not
can run
go
to.
back.
The,
Carbon
the
dating
problem
does
is,
not. It's not how they date the let's say the age of the Earth. That's not how they do it. Okay.
Lou,
There's a lot
there's a
more to
problem
these
here that I'm trying. There's a problem that I'm trying to point. Faith somewhere, okay, and it's going to be whatever that is. That's what you're going to put faith. Ultimate. It just is what it is, brother.
Does
So
that
Okay,
apply to
so
you?
I
yeah,
will leave
I
it at this.
believe.
I'll even go there. All right. I personally choose to use as little faith as I possibly can. I'll leave it there. All
Hmm.
right. All right. I try to do as little bit of my life based on faith as possible. Okay. Um, is there some things I told you before when you asked about faith? I'd have to think about it. Maybe there are some things that I just base on faith. Okay. Because I'm being honest. But I know that if I'm basing it on faith, that's not a good reason. I already know that. Now, am I capable of believing things without a good reason? Yeah, I could believe something without a good reason. I'm a human being. Of course I could. But that doesn't make it,
Okay.
that doesn't make that's a good way for me to go about doing it. All right. And the
Okay.
last thing, I asked you if you were Catholic for only one reason, then I got to go. The reason I
Hold on.
asked
Hold
that,
on. So, wait a second. Wait a second, Lou. I would like you to think about this. Do you even have faith in yourself? Can you think of yourself in a light where you're like, I would never do anyone dirty, no one that I really hold close to myself, and then now think of an example when you actually fucked up. Excuse my language, but you messed up and you didn't actually follow through in the faith that you have in yourself. So not even you can be trusted within yourself.
True.
That
yeah,
is the
True.
problem here.
because faith is not a
Yes.
good way to
Yes.
determine what is true. That's the very, you're
That's
proving
Because
my
you're
point.
yes.
yourself.
You can't trust
You yourself
yourself.
are not
You can't trust yourself 100% because
Yeah,
we all
you're
have been
literally
wrong in the
proving what I
past.
said.
Jesus
Correct.
says he's the way, the truth, and the life, though. So you don't even have faith in yourself. How are you supposed to have faith in anyone else?
I don't have faith in Jesus. I never said I did.
No, I never said you did either. I said you don't have faith in yourself. How would you have faith in anyone else that
I
is
don't
not
base
that
my life on
is
faith.
human?
It goes back to where we started this conversation.
Right.
I don't base my life on that.
Mhm. But you said you keep a little faith. So you come, but when you come back next time, if we ever meet again, you could tell me the things that you have faith in. But go ahead.
I'd
You were
have to
asking about me being
I'd
Catholic.
have to stretch because I purposely live my life trying not to use faith as a way to determine what is true. So I'd have to
Right.
go
So
back and
again,
really think about it and go, well,
yeah.
did I and that's a good thing to do. It's a good thing for me to
It's
do.
healthy.
Mhm.
Yes, it's a good thing because then I would say, gee, I was believing that for not a very good reason. But the reason I asked if you were Catholic is you know that the Catholic Church does not believe in sola scriptura anyway. They
So
believe that
okay.
the Bible, along with the tradition
Okay.
of the
Let,
church. So
let
why
Mm-hmm.
me
are you
address
so
that.
Bible? Why are you so Bible thumping? I
Okay.
had to ask you that.
Yes. Yes. Thank you very much for the question. I appreciate it. 1 Timothy 3:15 actually says that um,
All
basically
scripture.
also what the Bible says. It says to believe in the oral traditions that were passed down. The church is has a certain authority that goes along with the Bible. However, that is in a sense sola scriptura, but you're not going to accept the scriptura. So you don't believe in sola scriptura, and neither does anyone else who isn't Catholic.
I don't believe in any of it, my friend.
I understand that. You
So,
go ahead and you go ahead and you bring those questions up when you're sitting in a space where you can think about faith and what you actually have faith in, and I think that will be healthy for you. So I wish you well, my friend.
all right, and I want you to think about the last thing. Why in the world, or as
Hmm.
why in God's green earth, as people say, would you defend slavery? That's
Yes.
sick and that's horrible.
Okay, like I've already said before, we were talking about this an hour. My goodness, that is a form of slavery, anyways. If you don't agree, I'm sorry. I think you're just dead wrong.
You defend slavery, is that correct?
Sure, yeah, I can defend slavery. I can also point to verses
Enough
where it says
said.
seven.
Bye,
Hold on,
Scott.
7
All right, brother.
after it
We'll see
says
you.
in certain situations it does say after 7 years to release your slave. So whatever.
No, 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 no. You are not a
Hebrews.
Bible expert. You think you are. The book of
Uh huh.
Leviticus clearly speaks about owning foreign slaves for
For
life
life.
as property. Don't
And the
go quoting
Ah.
the
children.
Bible if you're not
So
a. I
okay,
read the Bible for many years, and Scott has
okay,
read the
sir.
Bible as well. And you're wrong. That's not what the
Oh, am I?
Bible says.
Okay.
And Dub,
Goodbye.
What is
I
one
have a
king?
hey Dub,
What is
one second. One
what is
second, Dub.
one king?
I
What is
hey
hold on? What is one? Hold on.
Dub, you're
I gotta
muted.
go. You
He's got to
believe
go,
that the
He
man.
made a
Bible
comment.
that
He
the
made a
Bible is
comment. You need
against
to leave to
slavery when
respond
the
to be
Bible
actually
is
respectful.
blatantly pro slavery.
Ah,
Okay? And if
yes,
you're gonna
and
be a
it also
Bible toter and a Bible
Lou,
thumping
hey
Catholic,
Lou,
goodbye.
excuse me, but you're actually. Let me give me the rebuttal. It's 1 Kings 8:41-43, and those strangers will be included. Oh, wah wah wah! It's a fact. Those strangers will be
Oh my
included.
gosh.
Yeah, how
The only
funny!
thing I
Play
wanted to
to the
say, Dub,
audience.
Okay,
the only
you're
thing I
Let's
not
wanted
going
to
to
go.
win a
say,
Bible debate with me. I've read the Bible many, many
Oh, I
times.
already did,
Okay,
bro.
I
I
gotta
already did before
go.
I even
All
opened my
right, the
mouth.
Bible is clear that you can own foreign slaves as property forever. All right, it's not just 7 years. All
yes.
right, it is
Right?
very
You need
clear,
to
perfectly
hey,
clear for any human being
Lou.
who
Okay,
understands
okay,
language.
Lou.
Clear.
Be
Correct.
less Lou, cut down on the wind, bro. So when it says 1 Kings 8:41-43, it says that foreigners will be joined because they would be worshiping the same God. At that point, they would have to release that slave. So a foreigner is talking about Gentiles who are not believers. That's case closed.
Okay, Mr. Bible expert.
All
Here,
right.
Okay.
Well, I just got you, Lou. I'll see you next time, Lou. Have fun with your trip of your faith and whatever
all right.
you believe in.
I
All right,
have
we'll
no
see you,
faith.
man.
I do not use faith. I use rational thinking, and it's of my own
You said that you
mind.
had a little bit of faith, Lou. You said you had a little bit, so go think
I was
about it.
saying I'd have to examine all the various things that I
All right.
believe.
Yeah.
Examination is very healthy, my friend. Good luck with it.
Okay, see you later. And
And
please stop defending slavery. Very bad look. Very bad.
yes, not good. But I put in the private chat Dub YouTube channel. I think you'd have a lot of fun with. That's the only reason I was trying to cut in. I wanted you to, if you wanted to spend a little time, only because I got to run, I got to do some things. But there's a channel that I think you would like. It's called DZ Debates. I put the link in the channel. He takes call-ins, and he discusses in detail a lot of the scriptures you're mentioning. So I thought you'd like to maybe call in and talk to him. He really breaks it down really well, probably a lot better than me. So, but what I'd encourage you to do is maybe next time, like we meet every Saturday, 12 o'clock on Saturday, and we always have different topics. So while I've got to run now, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, join the channel, come on through, and we can debate or talk about other topics. And you feel free to come up with topics yourself. Maybe I would like to take some of those on board as well, so we have more time to actually explore it. But my
No,
friend,
I
I've
think
got
I think we had a good time speaking. I kind of float around. I probably won't be back on your channel, but maybe I will if I run into it randomly. But it was nice talking with you, man. Thank you very much for your time.
yeah, absolutely, man. And you have a really good one. And thanks for tuning in, man. I appreciate that a lot. And I'm going to go ahead and get on out, man. But this was a good show. I enjoyed it. If you didn't see the whole thing, rewind back. I know, Arlindo, you're out there. You should check it out. It's a really good discussion. And we actually mentioned how the problem of evil relates to idealism as well, mainly towards the top. So we had a few thoughts on that. So, anyways, guys, I got to get on out of here. For those who are just looking at the channel, please like and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to build the community out so we can have these kind of discussions, man. Even though we may disagree, we're trying to show the world that we can actually have these hard conversations and hopefully come to some sort of at least understanding and put forth the best arguments for your point of view. You know what I mean? That way the audience knows what the Catholic view is or what the idealist view is or the atheist or what have you. We can all sort of engage in that. And again, join, like, and subscribe to the channel. And I hope to see you next weekend, man. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this one. I wish it could have lasted longer. Anyways, I'm out, man. Peace.